Hey there, welcome to Cozy Bedtime True Crime Stories. Tonight, we're diving into 3 hours of gripping true crime cases. Real stories of mystery, betrayal, and cold-blooded crimes, all set against the soothing backdrop of rain. It's the perfect blend of calm and unsettling. If these cases draw you in, tap that like button, share with your fellow true crime lovers, and subscribe to join our curious community. I'm always wondering, where are you tuning in from, and what time is it for you right now? Drop it in the comments below. Now settle in, and let's dig into the darkness. Story 1. The sun hung low over Queensland's Sunshine Coast on December 7th, 2003, bathing the coastal town of Nambour in a golden glow. The air was warm, thick with the scent of eucalyptus and the promise of summer holidays. At a modest home in Palmwoods, 13-year-old Daniel Morecombe laced up his sneakers, his brown eyes bright with anticipation. He was a slight boy, just over 5 feet tall, with a mop of dark hair and a shy smile that belied his adventurous spirit. That Sunday afternoon, he told his parents, Denise and Bruce Morecombe, he was heading to the nearby Sunland Shopping Center to buy Christmas presents. It was a routine errand, one he'd done before, a short trip down the Nambour Connection Road to an overpass where buses stopped regularly. Denise, a warm and protective mother, watched him leave, her heart light with the trust she placed in her youngest son. She expected him back by dinner, his arms full of gifts and stories. But as the hours ticked by and the Queensland sky darkened, Daniel didn't return. His absence would spark one of Australia's most enduring mysteries, a case that would grip a nation, shatter a family, and expose the chilling reality of a predator hiding in plain sight. Daniel was the youngest of 3 boys in the Morecombe family, a tight-knit unit rooted in love and routine. Bruce, a mechanic with a steady hand and a quiet demeanor, and Denise, a homemaker who poured her energy into her sons, had built a life of stability in Palmwoods, a small town nestled among rolling hills and sugarcane fields. Daniel, with his quick wit and boundless curiosity, was the heart of their home. He loved animals, often sneaking treats to the family's dog, and dreamed of becoming a veterinarian. At Woombi State School, he was a diligent student, popular among his peers for his kindness and infectious laugh. That Sunday, he'd set out wearing a red t-shirt, dark shorts, and a backpack, his steps light as he walked the familiar path to the bus stop under the Keel Mountain Road overpass, about a kilometer from home. It was 2:10 p.m. when he left, the day still bright, the world seemingly safe. Denise busied herself with chores, her mind on the approaching Christmas season. Bruce was at work, his hands greasy from engine repairs, expecting to come home to Daniel's chatter about his shopping trip. But by 5 p.m., when Daniel hadn't returned, Denise's maternal instincts stirred. She called his mobile phone, a recent gift to keep him connected, but it went straight to voicemail. She tried again, her fingers trembling, each unanswered ring tightening the knot in her stomach. Daniel was punctual, the kind of kid who called if he was running late. She contacted his older brothers, Dean and Bradley, who were out with friends, but they hadn't seen him. By 7 p.m., with darkness settling over Palmwoods, Denise and Bruce drove to the shopping center, their eyes scanning the streets for a glimpse of Daniel's red shirt. The stores were closing, the parking lot emptying, and there was no sign of him. Panic set in, raw and unrelenting. They called the Queensland Police Service, their voices breaking as they reported their son missing. The police response was immediate but cautious. Missing children cases, even in a safe region like the Sunshine Coast, weren't uncommon. Kids got lost, stayed at friends' houses, or missed buses. But Daniel's case felt different. The Morecombes were adamant. Their son wasn't a runaway. He had no reason to leave, no history of trouble, no secrets that hinted at rebellion. Senior Constable Michael Sharp, assigned to the case, took the report at the Nambour station, noting Daniel's description. 5 feet 1 inch, slim build, dark brown hair, last seen near the overpass. The police launched a search that night, officers combing the shopping center, interviewing shopkeepers, and checking bus routes. They found no trace of Daniel, no witnesses who recalled a boy in a red shirt. The overpass, a nondescript stretch of road flanked by bushland, offered no clues. As the night wore on, the Morecombes clung to hope, praying Daniel had simply gotten lost, that he'd walk through the door with an apology and a story. The next morning, December 8th, brought no answers, only a growing dread. The Queensland Police escalated the case, forming a task force led by Detective Sergeant Gavin Neal, a seasoned officer with a reputation for dogged determination. Neal's team canvassed the area around the overpass, knocking on doors and stopping drivers who frequented the road. They learned that a bus, scheduled to pass the overpass at 2:15 p.m., had broken down, forcing Daniel to wait for the next one. Witnesses reported seeing a boy matching his description standing alone, his backpack slung over one shoulder as cars whizzed by. Two men, standing near a blue sedan, were also spotted nearby, their presence noted by a passerby but not reported until later. The details were vague, the descriptions fleeting, a man in his 30s maybe with dark hair, but they were the first threads in a case that would unravel slowly, painfully over years. The Morecombes became fixtures in the search, their lives consumed by the need to find Daniel. Denise, her face etched with worry, plastered flyers across the Sunshine Coast, Daniel's photo staring out from every lamppost and shop window. Missing, Daniel Morecombe, 13, last seen December 7th, 2003. Bruce, quieter but no less determined, joined volunteer searches, trudging through dense bushland, his eyes scanning for any sign. A scrap of red fabric, a discarded backpack. The community rallied, hundreds turning out for searches, their footsteps crunching through the underbrush as they called Daniel's name. Local media, including the Sunshine Coast Daily, ran front-page stories, and national outlets like the Australian and ABC News picked up the case, amplifying the Morecombe's plea for information. Tips flooded in, sightings in Brisbane, a boy on a train, a teenager in a nearby town, but each lead fizzled, leaving the family grasping at shadows. The police investigation deepened, but the lack of physical evidence was maddening. Daniel's phone, last used to call Denise at 1:35 p.m. to say he was heading to the bus stop, showed no activity after his disappearance. His bank account, with a small amount saved from chores, was untouched. The overpass, a busy thoroughfare, had no CCTV cameras in 2003, and the witnesses who came forward offered conflicting accounts. Some recalled a boy waiting alone. Others mentioned the blue sedan and the two men, but their descriptions varied. The police considered every angle: a random abduction, a runaway scenario, even the possibility that Daniel had been taken by someone he knew. But the Morecombe's rejected the runaway theory outright. Daniel was happy, loved, secure. His life revolved around family, school, and his dreams of working with animals. The idea that he'd leave without a word was unthinkable. By early 2004, the case had become a national obsession, dubbed the Daniel Morecombe mystery by the media. The Queensland Police, under pressure from public outcry and the Morecombe's relentless advocacy, expanded the investigation. They brought in forensic experts, searched waterways and forests, and interviewed hundreds of locals. A $250,000 reward, later increased to $1 million, was offered for information leading to Daniel's recovery or the arrest of those responsible. The Morecombe's, determined to keep Daniel's name alive, established the Daniel Morecombe Foundation, a non-profit aimed at child safety education and supporting families of missing children. Denise spoke at schools, her voice steady despite her grief, urging parents to teach their kids about stranger danger. Bruce, more reserved, focused on fundraising, his quiet strength a counterpoint to Denise's public resolve. Their older sons, Dean and Bradley, struggled with their own grief, their childhoods overshadowed by their brother's absence. The investigation took a darker turn as police explored the possibility of a predator. Queensland, like much of Australia, had seen its share of child abductions, and the similarities to other cases were chilling. The 1987 disappearance of Sharon Phillips in Brisbane, never solved, and the 1998 abduction and murder of Tyler Palmer, still years away from resolution, loomed in the minds of investigators. The blue sedan, mentioned by witnesses, became a focal point. Police tracked down hundreds of similar vehicles registered in Queensland, but none led to a breakthrough. The two men seen near the overpass remained elusive, their descriptions too vague to narrow the search. Detective Neal, poring over case files late into the night, felt the weight of the case. He knew time was the enemy, memories faded, evidence degraded, and the trail grew colder with each passing day. Years passed, and the case remained unsolved. The Morecombe's home became a shrine to Daniel, his bedroom untouched, his school books still on the desk. Denise kept his favorite stuffed animal, a worn koala, on her bedside table, a reminder of the boy she refused to give up on. The family marked Daniel's birthdays, 14, 15, 16, each one a painful milestone. The media coverage waned, but the Morecombe's kept the case alive, appearing on shows like 60 Minutes and working with groups like the National Missing Persons Coordination Center. Tips continued to trickle in, some credible, others cruel hoaxes. A man in Perth claimed to have seen Daniel. A psychic pointed to a dam near Nambour. Each lead was chased, each hope dashed. The police, under scrutiny for their slow progress, insisted they were doing all they could, but the lack of a body, a crime scene, or a clear suspect left them grasping. The breakthrough came in August 2011, nearly 8 years after Daniel's disappearance. A tip, prompted by a renewed media push and the $1 million reward, led police to Brett Peter Cowan, a 41-year-old drifter with a long criminal history. Cowan, a wiry man with a weathered face and a penchant for lying, had been on the police's radar early in the investigation, but was overlooked due to lack of evidence. Born in 1969, he had a rap sheet dating back to his teens: burglary, theft, and most disturbingly, child sex offenses. In 1987, at 18, he'd molested a 7-year-old boy in Brisbane, serving 2 years. In 1993, he lured a 6-year-old boy into a public toilet in Darwin, brutally assaulting him and leaving him for dead. That crime earned him 7 years, but he was paroled in 1998, free to roam by the time Daniel vanished. Cowan's name surfaced in 2005 when a tipster reported seeing him near the Sunshine Coast around the time of Daniel's disappearance, but the lead went cold. In 2011, the Queensland Police, desperate for progress, launched a covert operation targeting Cowan. They employed a technique known as the Mr. Big Sting, a controversial method used in Canada and Australia to elicit confessions. Undercover officers posed as members of a criminal gang, befriending Cowan and drawing him into their world with promises of money and power. Over months, they built trust, staging fake crimes to test his loyalty. In August 2011, during a staged meeting with the gang's boss in Perth, Cowan was confronted with a fabricated scenario. The gang needed to know if he had any skeletons that could jeopardize their operations. Fearing exclusion, Cowan confessed. He admitted to abducting Daniel from the overpass, luring him into a blue sedan with an offer of a ride, then driving him to an abandoned house in Birva, a rural area 15 kilometers away. There, he attempted to molest Daniel, but when the boy resisted, Cowan panicked and strangled him. He disposed of Daniel's body in a nearby creek bed, covering it with dirt and branches. The confession, recorded by hidden cameras, was chilling. Cowan's voice was matter-of-fact, devoid of remorse, as he described the crime. He led undercover officers to the site, a swampy area off Kings Road, where he claimed to have left Daniel's remains. The police, stunned by the breakthrough, launched a massive search on August 13, 2011. Forensic teams, volunteers, and cadaver dogs scoured the Birva site, a desolate patch of scrubland surrounded by pine plantations. Over days, they uncovered fragments, bones, a shoe, scraps of clothing, later confirmed through DNA as Daniel's. The red T-shirt, now faded, was among the items, a heartbreaking confirmation for the Morecombe's, who were called to the site to identify it. Denise collapsed, her sobs echoing through the bush, while Bruce held her, his face a mask of grief. Cowan was arrested on August 13, 2011, charged with murder, child stealing, deprivation of liberty, indecent treatment of a child, and interfering with a corpse. The arrest, announced publicly, sent shockwaves through Australia. The Morecambes, who had waited nearly a decade for answers, faced a new kind of pain: the confirmation of Daniel's death. The evidence was overwhelming: the confession, the recovered remains, and additional findings, including Daniel's backpack, found buried nearby. Cowan's blue sedan, a 1980s model Toyota, matched witness descriptions from 2003, though it had long been sold and scrapped. The Queensland Police, led by Detective Superintendent Damien Hanson, hailed the sting as a triumph, though they faced criticism for the controversial tactic, which some argued bordered on entrapment. The trial began on February 10, 2014, in the Brisbane Supreme Court, presided over by Justice Rosalind Atkinson. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Denise and Bruce sat in the front row, their faces etched with resolve, clutching photos of Daniel. The prosecution, led by Glenn Cash, presented a meticulous case. Cowan's recorded confession was played, his voice chillingly detached as he described the abduction and murder. Forensic experts testified about the remains, confirming strangulation as the cause of death. Witnesses from 2003, including the bus driver and passers-by, corroborated the timeline, placing a boy matching Daniel's description at the overpass with a man resembling Cowan. The defense, led by Angus Edwards, argued that the confession was coerced, a product of the Mr. Big Sting's psychological pressure. They claimed Cowan, a habitual liar, had fabricated the story to impress the gang. But the evidence, DNA, the recovered items, and Cowan's detailed knowledge of the crime scene undermined their case. Cowan took the stand, his demeanor smug, his answers evasive. He denied the crime, claiming he'd made it all up, but his lies unraveled under cross-examination. The jury, after a 6-week trial, deliberated for just 4 hours. On March 14, 2014, they found Cowan guilty on all charges. The courtroom erupted in quiet sobs, the Morecambes embracing as justice was delivered. Justice Atkinson sentenced Cowan to life imprisonment with a non-parole period of 20 years, calling the crime cold-blooded and heinous. She praised the Morecambes' resilience, noting their extraordinary dignity in the face of unimaginable loss. The aftermath was bittersweet. The Morecambes, while relieved by the conviction, faced the reality of Daniel's death. They channeled their grief into the Daniel Morecambe Foundation, expanding its reach to educate thousands of Australian children about safety. Day for Daniel, an annual event held on the last Friday of October, became a national call to protect kids, with schools and communities wearing red in Daniel's memory. Denise and Bruce became advocates, their voices steady as they spoke at parliaments and schools, their pain fueling change. Queensland introduced stricter laws for monitoring sex offenders, and the police refined their missing persons protocols, lessons learned from the case's early missteps. Cowan, incarcerated at Woolston Correctional Center, remains a pariah, his appeals denied in 2015 and 2016. The Sunshine Coast, once a place of carefree summers, carries Daniel's legacy. The overpass, now marked with a small memorial, stands as a reminder of a boy who loved animals, who dreamed big, who was taken too soon. The Morecambes, forever changed, continue their work, their love for Daniel a light that endures. His story, told through court records, news reports, and his parents' tireless advocacy, is a testament to resilience, a warning of hidden dangers, and a call to never forget the boy in the red t-shirt. Story 2. The night of October 16, 2015, pulsed with the electric energy of Orlando's downtown, where neon lights flickered and music spilled from the attic nightclub into the warm Florida air. Sasha Samsudian, 27, moved through the crowd, her laughter mingling with the bass-heavy beats. She was a vibrant presence, her dark hair catching the strobe lights, her smile infectious. A New York native who'd made Orlando her home, Sasha was the kind of person who lit up a room, outgoing, ambitious, and fiercely independent. She worked as a social media manager for 407 apartments, a real estate company, where her knack for connecting people with their perfect homes had earned her a reputation as a local expert. Her online profile described her as the Cupid of apartment hunting, a fitting title for someone who thrived on building relationships. That night, dressed in a purple top and jeans, she was out with friends, savoring the freedom of a Saturday, unaware that the hours ahead would lead to a tragedy that would shake her community and devastate those who loved her. Sasha's life was one of promise. Born on July 4th, 1988, she'd grown up in Orlando, her childhood filled with the warmth of family and the chaos of a bustling household. Her parents, Tara and Ken Samsudian, were her anchors. Her mother a former ER nurse with a fierce protective streak. Her father a steady presence who cherished his daughter's spark. After graduating from the University of Florida, Sasha had carved out a career that suited her extroverted nature. Her days spent crafting social media campaigns and guiding clients through the city's rental market. She lived alone at Uptown Place Apartments, a modern complex in the heart of Orlando's entertainment district, where security cameras, digital key codes, and a 24/7 security guard promised safety. Her third-floor apartment was her sanctuary, a space filled with photos of friends, mementos from college, and the quiet hum of a life she was building on her own terms. That night, Sasha had started at the Attic nightclub with a group of friends, including Anthony Roper, a close confidant who'd known her since high school. The club was a favorite haunt, its rooftop patio offering views of Orlando's skyline. Sasha, always the life of the party, danced and laughed, but by 12:30 a.m., she was ready to move on. She told Anthony she was leaving to visit other bars, her voice light, her mood buoyant. He planned to meet her for breakfast the next morning, a casual Sunday tradition. Sasha stepped into the night, her figure disappearing into the crowd, her purple top a flash of color under the streetlights. It was the last time Anthony saw her alive. By morning, the mood had shifted. Anthony woke to find no messages from Sasha, no reply to his texts about their breakfast plans. Her social media, usually a flurry of posts and stories, was silent. Concern crept in. Sasha was reliable, her phone always within reach, her responses prompt. He called her, but the line went to voicemail. He texted again, then reached out to two other friends, Julia Goff and her roommate, who'd been out the previous night. They hadn't heard from Sasha either. By mid-afternoon, their worry deepened. Sasha had mentioned a baby shower she was attending that day, a gift already wrapped and ready. When Julia drove by Uptown Place and saw the gift still in Sasha's car, untouched, a chill ran through her. Something was wrong. The trio converged on Sasha's apartment, knocking on her door, calling her name. The silence was deafening. Anthony dialed the Orlando Police Department, requesting a welfare check, his voice tight with unease. At 7:30 p.m. on October 17th, officers arrived at Uptown Place, a sleek building with palm trees lining its entrance and a reputation for security. They knocked on Sasha's door, number 345, but there was no answer. Using a master key, they entered, and the air hit them first, a sharp, chemical stench of bleach that stung their noses. The apartment was tidy, almost too tidy, the counters gleaming, the floors spotless. But as they moved toward the bedroom, their flashlights caught a shape on the bed, wrapped in a white comforter. Pulling back the covers, they found Sasha, her body still, her purple shirt torn open, her bra ripped, her pants and underwear gone. Her necklace was tangled in her hair, a sign of struggle. Bruises marred her neck, her chest, her arms, and her face bore the marks of blunt trauma. The officers stepped back, their training kicking in, preserving the scene for homicide detectives. Sasha Samsudian, vibrant and full of life just hours before, was dead. The Orlando Police Department's homicide unit, led by Detective Joseph Gribble, descended on the apartment. The scene was meticulous yet chilling. Investigators noted the toilet seat was up, an odd detail in a home where only a woman lived. Fingerprints were lifted from the rim, partial shoe prints found on the floor. Swabs taken from Sasha's chest and neck revealed foreign DNA, a critical clue. The smell of bleach suggested someone had tried to erase evidence, but they hadn't been thorough enough. A condom wrapper lay discarded near the bed, and the absence of Sasha's phone and keys raised questions. The medical examiner, Dr. Joshua Stephanie, arrived to examine the body. His preliminary findings were grim. Sasha had been strangled, her larynx fractured, her body battered with blows to the head and torso. Abrasions on her arms and hips suggested she'd been restrained, fought back, lost. The lack of forced entry pointed to someone she knew, or someone with access. The investigation began with urgency, the weight of Sasha's death pressing on the detectives. They started with those closest to her. Anthony Roper, distraught, recounted their night at the attic, confirming Sasha had left alone at 12:30 a.m. His story checked out, his grief genuine. Detectives accessed Sasha's iPad, synced to her missing phone, and found her last text at 5:12 a.m. to Ben, a high school friend she'd dated intermittently. Ben was interviewed in Tampa, his DNA swabbed and cleared. Another ex-boyfriend, Taylor, was questioned, his DNA also ruled out. The focus shifted to Uptown Place, a building designed to be a fortress. Its security cameras, digital key logs, and on-duty guards should have ensured safety, yet Sasha had been killed in her own bed. Detectives requested the CCTV footage, but it wasn't immediately available, a delay that frustrated the team. They interviewed Stephen Duxbury, the 33-year-old security guard on duty that night. Duxbury, a former Air Force veteran with a lean build and a quiet demeanor, presented himself as professional, cooperative. He told detectives he'd encountered Sasha at the building's entrance around 1:45 a.m., accompanied by two women. She'd forgotten her key fob and ID, he said, and couldn't access the building. When another resident buzzed in, Sasha followed, and Duxbury claimed he last saw her fumbling with her apartment's key code. His story was plausible, his tone steady, but something about his calmness unsettled Detective Gribble. Duxbury allowed police to search his home, providing a pair of shoes that didn't match the prints at the scene. Still, his role as the guard on duty made him a person of interest. The break came when detectives tracked down Julia Goff and her roommate, the women who'd helped Sasha home. Reached through a media appeal, they described finding Sasha wandering downtown, intoxicated and disoriented. Concerned, they'd invited her into their Uber, driving her to Uptown Place. At the entrance, they'd asked Duxbury to let Sasha in, explaining she lived there, her name on the call box. He refused, citing protocol, but Sasha gained entry when another tenant, later identified as Michael Papa, buzzed in. Papa, cleared via DNA and key logs, confirmed Sasha seemed pretty drunk. Julia and her roommate left, assuming Sasha was safe with a security guard present. But another witness, Clayton Becerra, an upstairs neighbor, added a chilling detail. Doing laundry that night, he'd seen Sasha staggering down the hallway, Duxbury trailing a few doors behind, his eyes fixed on her. When the CCTV footage finally arrived, it told a damning story. At 1:46 a.m., Sasha appeared on camera, navigating the building's exterior floors and stairways, her movements unsteady. Duxbury was there, too, shadowing her, sometimes walking beside her, his security uniform a false badge of trust. For nearly 40 minutes, he followed her through sealed access doors, using his own key fob, areas not covered by cameras offering him opportunities to act unseen. At 2:25 a.m., they were seen heading to the garage together, returning shortly after. Duxbury's initial account, that he'd only seen Sasha briefly at her door, crumbled. The footage showed him lingering, watching, waiting. Most damning was a clip from 6:36 a.m., after his shift supposedly ended at 6 a.m. Duxbury, still in uniform, carried 2 white garbage bags with red handles to the second-floor garage, where his car was parked. The bags matched those found in Sasha's apartment, and garbage disposal wasn't part of his duties. Detectives dug deeper. A search warrant for Duxbury's phone revealed a chilling detail. At 5 a.m. on October 17th, he'd searched how to override a quick-set digital deadbolt, the exact lock on Sasha's door. The timing coincided with a 90-minute gap where he was absent from security footage and patrol logs. His fingerprints, on file from his security job, matched the print on Sasha's toilet seat and a thumbprint on her nightstand. The DNA on Sasha's breast was his, the odds of it belonging to someone else in the billions. A polygraph test, which Duxbury agreed to, exposed his lies. Asked if he'd been in Sasha's apartment, he said, "No, never." Asked if he was responsible for her death, he denied it. The machine betrayed him, his responses marked as deceptive. The soles of boots found in his home matched the partial prints in Sasha's apartment. On October 30th, 2015, Stephen Duxbury was arrested, charged with first-degree murder, attempted sexual battery, and burglary with assault. The arrest sent shockwaves through Orlando. Uptown Place, marketed as a safe haven, had harbored a predator. Sasha's parents, Tara and Ken, were shattered. Tara, who'd left her nursing job after struggling to treat rape victims, spoke of the unbearable loss. "I'll never have dinner with my daughter again," she told reporters, her voice breaking. "My husband will never walk her down the aisle." Ken, clutching a photo of Sasha, called her his baby, thanking the police for their relentless work. The community mourned, leaving flowers outside Uptown Place, where Sasha's vibrant spirit had once brightened the halls. Her friends, led by Anthony, organized vigils, their grief tempered by anger at the betrayal of trust. Duxbury, hired by Vital Security in 2015, had passed an FBI background check, but his history raised red flags. As a juvenile, he'd been charged with reckless assault for hitting a girl with a shovel. In the Air Force, he'd been involved in a stabbing attack, though details were vague. A female resident had reported him as sketchy in May 2015, after he followed her to her apartment, a complaint ignored. The trial began on November 14, 2017, in the Orange County Courthouse, presided over by Judge Lisa Munoz. The courtroom was packed, Sasha's parents in the front row, their faces etched with pain. Prosecutor William J. laid out a meticulous case, presenting the CCTV footage, the DNA evidence, and the polygraph results. Dr. Stephanie testified about Sasha's injuries: strangulation, blunt trauma, abrasions from restraint. The condom wrapper, though not containing Duxbury's DNA, suggested an attempted sexual assault. Detectives recounted Duxbury's inconsistent statements, his claim of seeing an unrecognizable person chasing Sasha a desperate lie. The garbage bags, the bleach, the phone search, all pointed to a calculated act, not a spontaneous crime. The defense, led by Aaron Delgado and Cheney Mason, argued the case was mishandled, claiming the real killer was still at large. They questioned why more DNA testing wasn't done on other items, suggested Sasha's injuries could stem from rough sex, and challenged the polygraph's reliability. Duxbury declined to testify, and the defense called no witnesses, resting on doubt. On November 21, 2017, after 6 days of testimony and 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict: guilty on all counts. The courtroom exhaled, Tara and Ken embracing through tears. Tara's victim impact statement was raw, her voice steady as she faced Duxbury. "You took my daughter, my American girl, who lived for her dreams," she said. "You broke our chain." Ken spoke of Sasha's breathless moments, her laughter, her love. Duxbury, expressionless, offered no statement. Judge Munoz sentenced him to 2 life terms without parole for murder and attempted sexual battery, plus 15 years for burglary. The gallery applauded quietly, a release of years of pain. The aftermath was a reckoning. Sasha's parents filed a lawsuit against Uptown Place, Vital Security, and the lock manufacturer, alleging negligence. The lack of hallway cameras, the failure to act on Duxbury's prior complaints, had created an opportunity for his crime. The suit, settled out of court, brought no closure, only a reminder of systemic failures. Tara and Ken channeled their grief into advocacy, speaking at safety forums, urging apartment complexes to vet security personnel rigorously. Sasha's friends created a scholarship in her name at the University of Florida, supporting students in real estate, her passion. Uptown Place installed new cameras, but the building's reputation was tarnished, its halls quieter without Sasha's energy. Stephen Duxbury, now 43, remains at Graceville Correctional Facility in Jackson County, Florida, his appeals exhausted. His life sentences ensure he'll never walk free, but for the Samsadians, justice is hollow. Tara keeps Sasha's room untouched, her college diploma on the wall, her favorite scarf on the bed. Ken visits her grave, whispering memories of their baby. Orlando, a city of lights and laughter, carries Sasha's story, a warning of trust betrayed, a call to protect the vulnerable. Her smile, captured in photos, endures, a light that refuses to fade. Story 3. The morning of February 27, 2023, dawned cool and overcast in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. The city's vibrant pulse softened by a drizzle that clung to the cobblestone streets of Campo Grande, a working-class neighborhood far from the glitz of Copacabana. Jeff Machado, a 44-year-old actor and journalist, was a familiar figure in this quiet suburb, his warm smile and infectious energy lighting up the modest home he shared with his 8 beloved dogs. Jeff was a man of dreams, his life a tapestry of ambition and resilience, woven through years of small roles in Brazilian telenovelas and a burgeoning career in reality TV. That morning, he stepped out of his house on Rua Itaparu, his phone buzzing with messages about a new job opportunity in Sao Paulo, a chance to anchor a program that could elevate his career. He never returned, and his disappearance would unravel a chilling tale of betrayal, greed, and a meticulously planned murder that shocked Brazil and left a family grappling with unimaginable loss. Jeff Machado was a son of Rio, born in 1978 to a middle-class family in the city's sprawling suburbs. His mother, Maria das Dores Machado, a retired schoolteacher with a fierce love for her only child, had nurtured Jeff's creative spark from a young age. His father, Luis, a mechanic, had passed away when Jeff was a teenager, leaving a void that deepened his bond with Maria. Jeff's charisma was evident early on. He performed in school plays, his expressive brown eyes and quick wit captivating audiences. After studying journalism at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, he pivoted to acting, landing bit parts in telenovelas like Rei Davi and Guerra dos Sexos. His role on the reality show Domingo de Gente in 2013 brought him modest fame, his charm earning him fans across Brazil. By 2023, Jeff was a freelancer, juggling acting gigs, producing short films, and teaching yoga, his life a blend of hustle and heart. His dogs, Pint Share, Lupita, and 6 others, were his family, their playful barks filling his home with joy. Jeff's life wasn't without struggles. The entertainment industry was cutthroat, and his openly gay identity, while embraced by friends, sometimes drew judgment in conservative circles. He battled periods of financial strain, his dreams often outpacing his bank account. Yet, Jeff was relentless, his optimism a beacon. In January 2023, he shared exciting news with Maria. A producer, Bruno de Almeida, had offered him a high-paying job in Sao Paulo, a chance to host a TV program. The offer came with a catch, a $5,000 payment to secure the role, which Jeff, trusting Bruno's credentials, paid without hesitation. He told friends, including his close confidant Vera Fisher, about his plans to travel to Sao Paulo for a meeting on January 27, 2023. That was the last day anyone saw him alive. Maria's worry began when Jeff's phone went silent. He was diligent about checking in, his daily calls to her a ritual since he'd moved out years ago. By February 2nd, 2023, after a week of unanswered texts, Maria's unease turned to dread. She drove to Jeff's Campo Grande home, her heart sinking at the sight of his locked gate, the dog's barks frantic and hungry. Inside, the house was eerily tidy, Jeff's laptop open on the kitchen table, his yoga mat neatly rolled in the corner. His wallet, ID, and car keys were gone, but his car, a white Fiat Punto, remained parked outside. Maria called Jeff's friends, including Vera, who confirmed he'd mentioned the Sao Paulo trip but hadn't returned. Desperate, Maria filed a missing person report with Rio's 34th Police Precinct on February 9th, her hands trembling as she described her son's last known movements. The Rio de Janeiro Civil Police, led by Detective Ellen Sudo, took the case seriously. Jeff's disappearance, in a city where missing persons cases often went unsolved, stood out due to his minor celebrity status. Pseudo, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for tenacity, interviewed Maria and Vera, piecing together Jeff's final days. His phone records showed a flurry of calls to Bruno de Almeida, a 42-year-old producer with a murky past, and another man, Jean Enrique de Almeida, Bruno's cousin. The police traced Jeff's phone to a tower in Campo Grande on January 27th, then nothing. His device went offline, as if switched off or destroyed. Surveillance footage from a neighbor's camera showed Jeff leaving his home at 10:15 a.m. that day, carrying a small backpack, his expression upbeat as he climbed into a waiting car, a dark sedan driven by an unidentified man. On May 8, 2023, a breakthrough came in the form of a gruesome discovery. A utility worker, digging in a vacant lot to repair a water line, unearthed a wooden chest buried 2 meters deep, sealed with cement. The chest, heavy and weathered, emitted a foul odor, prompting the worker to call police. Pseudo's team arrived, their faces grim as they pried open the chest. Inside was a body, bound with tape and wrapped in plastic, in advanced decomposition. Dental records and a tattoo on the ankle, a small lotus flower, confirmed it was Jeff Machado. An autopsy conducted by the Rio Medical Legal Institute revealed he'd been strangled, his body buried shortly after death, likely on January 27th. The chest, a makeshift coffin, suggested a calculated effort to conceal the crime. The discovery, reported by O Globo and BBC Brazil, sent shockwaves through Rio. Maria, informed by Pseudo, collapsed in grief, clutching a photo of Jeff with his dogs. The public, familiar with Jeff from his TV appearances, flooded social media with tributes, posts on X calling him a light snuffed out too soon. The police focused on Bruno and Jean, arresting them on May 10, 2023, on charges of murder, concealment of a corpse, and fraud. Bruno, a wiry man with a guarded demeanor, had a history of small-time scams, his LinkedIn profile touting dubious production credits. Jean, 34, was a handyman with no criminal record, but a deep loyalty to his cousin. Both men, detained at Benfica prison, denied involvement, but the evidence was mounting. The investigation uncovered a chilling motive: financial gain and personal betrayal. Bruno, posing as a producer, had lured Jeff with the fake job offer, exploiting his trust and ambition. Jeff's payment, funneled through Bruno's account, was part of a larger scheme. Police found that Bruno had accessed Jeff's bank accounts post-mortem, withdrawing $20,000 using stolen credentials. Text messages revealed Bruno's resentment toward Jeff, who'd rebuffed his romantic advances years earlier. Jean, complicit in the plan, had helped dig the grave, his carpentry skills used to craft the chest. The sedan in the surveillance footage was traced to Jean, its trunk large enough to transport the body. Forensic analysis found Jeff's DNA in the car, along with traces of his blood, sealing the case. The trial began on November 6, 2023, in Rio's 4th Criminal Court, presided over by Judge Alessandro Bilac. The courtroom, packed with reporters from Folha de Estado Paulo and international outlets like The Guardian, buzzed with anticipation. Maria, her face etched with grief, attended every session, her presence a silent demand for justice. Prosecutors, led by Dr. Rafael Almeida, presented a meticulous case: the chest, the DNA, the bank records, and the texts. A key witness, Vera Fisher, testified about Jeff's excitement over the job, her voice breaking as she described his dreams. Surveillance footage, played in court, showed Bruno and Jean near the vacant lot on January 27th, their movements furtive. The prosecution argued the murder was premeditated, driven by greed and revenge, Bruno's charm a mask for his malice. The defense, led by attorney Carlos Lima, painted a different picture. Bruno claimed Jeff had been alive when he left for Sao Paulo, suggesting an unknown assailant was responsible. Jean, quieter and less convincing, said he'd only helped Bruno with construction work, unaware of the chest's contents. The defense questioned the autopsy, arguing the decomposition obscured the true cause of death. But the jury, after a 2-week trial, deliberated for just 3 hours. On November 20th, 2023, they found Bruno and Jean guilty of first-degree murder, fraud, and concealment. Bruno was sentenced to 25 years, Jean to 22, their appeals denied in 2024. Judge Bilak, addressing the courtroom, called the crime a betrayal of trust, her voice heavy with the case's weight. The aftermath was a tapestry of grief and healing. Maria, devastated by the loss of her only child, moved to Niterói, unable to stay in Rio's shadow. She founded a foundation in Jeff's name, supporting aspiring actors from low-income backgrounds, a tribute to his dreams. Jeff's dogs, cared for by Vera during the investigation, were adopted by friends, their playful energy a reminder of his love. Campo Grande, a neighborhood of resilience, mourned collectively, its residents leaving flowers at Jeff's home. The case, covered by Reuters and TV Globo, sparked debates about trust in Brazil's entertainment industry, where scams preyed on ambition. Bruno and Jean, now at Banga prison, remain isolated, their families distancing themselves. Jeff's story, a blend of hope and horror, lingers in Rio's memory. His smile, captured in telenovela stills, graces Maria's home, a beacon of his light. The vacant lot, now a community garden, blooms with lotuses, a nod to Jeff's tattoo. Brazil, a nation of dreamers, carries his legacy, a reminder that even in a city of samba and sun, darkness can lurk, but love and justice endure. Story 4. The early summer sun hung low over the rolling hills of Caldwell, Idaho, on June 5, 2017, casting a golden glow across the quiet farmland along Indiana Avenue. The air was warm, thick with the scent of freshly cut hay and blooming sagebrush, as a pickup truck rumbled down the gravel driveway of a modest farmhouse. Cheryl Baker, a 57-year-old woman with a kind smile and a penchant for tending her garden, had lived there with her husband, Michael Bullinger, for just a month. The couple, married for a decade, had moved from Ogden, Utah, seeking a fresh start on this 10-acre property, where the promise of rural peace seemed within reach. But that day, Cheryl's sister, Cindy, grew uneasy. Cheryl hadn't answered her texts or calls for days, an unusual silence from a woman who cherished family check-ins. Cindy, her worry mounting, called the Canyon County Sheriff's Office, requesting a welfare check. What deputies would find in that unassuming shed behind the farmhouse would unravel a chilling tale of betrayal, violence, and a fugitive whose secrets would haunt the tight-knit community. Cheryl Baker was a woman of quiet resilience, her life shaped by love and loss. Born in Ogden, Utah, she'd built a career as a schoolteacher, her patience and warmth making her a favorite among students. She met Michael Bullinger, a retired Air Force pilot, in 2007, and their marriage was a blend of companionship and shared dreams. Michael, 60, was a tall man with a commanding presence, his gray hair and sharp brown eyes hinting at a life of discipline. He'd flown private planes for a logistics company, his travels taking him across the country, but he spoke often of settling down, of finding a place where he and Cheryl could grow old together. The Caldwell farmhouse, purchased in May 2017, was their dream, a place to plant roots, raise chickens, and escape the hustle of city life. Cheryl's family, especially her sister Cindy, noticed her excitement in texts about the new home, her plans for a vegetable garden, her joy at the open space. But Cheryl wasn't the only woman in Michael's life. Nadia Medley, 48, and her 14-year-old daughter, Peyton, had also arrived at the farmhouse that spring. Nadia, a vibrant woman with a quick laugh, had met Michael in Ogden 2 years earlier, after the death of her husband, Tom, from a heart attack in 2014. A single mother, Nadia was raising Peyton, a bright teenager who excelled in school and dreamed of becoming a veterinarian. Michael, charismatic and attentive, had swept Nadia off her feet, promising to care for her and Peyton as his own. According to Nadia's friend, Rebecca Lorenz, the couple's bond was intense, their relationship a whirlwind of shared plans. Nadia, unaware of Michael's marriage to Cheryl, believed they were building a future together. In May 2017, she and Peyton packed their belongings, leaving Ogden for the Idaho farm, where Michael had painted a picture of a new beginning. The women's worlds, Cheryl's and Nadia's, were about to collide in a way none could have foreseen. Cindy's call to the sheriff's office set the investigation in motion. On June 5, 2017, Deputy Brian Peterson arrived at the Indiana Avenue property, his boots crunching against the gravel as he approached the farmhouse. The house was quiet, its windows dark, the only sound the distant hum of irrigation sprinklers. No one answered his knocks. He circled the property, noting a pickup truck parked near the garage, its hood cool to the touch. A faint odor, sharp and unsettling, drifted from a storage shed at the back of the lot. Peterson, his instincts sharpened by years on the job, opened the shed door. The stench hit him like a wall, decomposition, unmistakable and overwhelming. Inside, in the dim light, he saw 3 bodies, stacked and wrapped in plastic, their forms barely recognizable. He radioed for backup, his voice steady but urgent, as the reality of what he'd found sank in. The Canyon County Sheriff's Office descended on the property, their patrol cars lining the quiet road. Sheriff Kieran Donahue, a no-nonsense leader with deep ties to the community, took charge. The shed, a simple metal structure used for storing tools, became a crime scene, cordoned off with yellow tape. Coroner Vicky DeGius-Morris arrived, her face grim as she examined the bodies. The victims, all female, had each been killed with a single gunshot wound, their bodies in advanced decomposition, suggesting they'd been dead for weeks. Identification was slow, but dental records and personal items confirmed their identities. Cheryl Baker, Nadia Medley, and Peyton Medley. The news sent a shockwave through Caldwell, a town of 50,000 where violent crime was rare. The sheriff's office issued a warrant for Michael Bullinger, the homeowner, initially for failure to report a death, but soon upgraded to 3 counts of first-degree murder. The investigation revealed a tangled web of relationships. Cheryl's family confirmed she and Michael had bought the farmhouse together, their move documented in property records. Nadia's friend, Rebecca Lorenz, provided a crucial lead. Nadia and Peyton had moved to Idaho with Michael, believing they were starting a new life. Lorenz, speaking to the Idaho Statesman, described Nadia's excitement, her texts about the farm's beauty, her dreams of marrying Michael. But Cheryl's family revealed a chilling detail. Cheryl had sent a friend a text on June 3rd, saying, "Take care of my dogs. I don't know if I'm coming back." The message, cryptic and out of character, suggested she sensed danger. A neighbor, interviewed by the Associated Press, recalled hearing a gunshot between June 6th and June 10th, followed by a woman's scream in the early morning hours. She hadn't called police, assuming it was a hunter or a domestic dispute, a decision she now regretted. Detectives pieced together the timeline. The killings likely occurred between June 3rd and June 5th, shortly after Nadia and Peyton arrived at the farm. The absence of forced entry suggested the victims knew their killer, and Michael's sudden disappearance pointed to his guilt. His pickup truck, a silver Dodge, was found abandoned on June 24th in a remote area of Grand Teton National Park, Wyoming, 300 miles from Caldwell. Inside, investigators found camping gear, a map, and traces of blood, but no sign of Michael. The FBI joined the case, classifying him as a fugitive, armed and dangerous. His description, 6 feet 1 inch, 240 pounds, gray hair, brown eyes, was broadcast across the country, with alerts on CNN, Fox News, and local outlets like KTVB. Tips flooded in, sightings in Montana, Utah, even California, but none led to an arrest. Michael, a former pilot with survival skills, seemed to have vanished into the vast wilderness. The motive remained elusive, but investigators theorized a love triangle gone wrong. Cheryl, unaware of Michael's relationship with Nadia, may have discovered his deception when Nadia and Peyton arrived at the farm. Nadia, equally unaware of Cheryl, might have confronted Michael, escalating tensions. Peyton, an innocent caught in the crossfire, was likely killed to eliminate a witness. The single gunshot suggested a deliberate act, not a crime of passion, but the lack of a murder weapon complicated the case. Ballistics experts confirmed the bullets were from a 9mm handgun, but no such weapon was found. The shed, a makeshift tomb, indicated Michael had planned to conceal the bodies, buying time to flee. The community reeled. Caldwell, known for its agricultural roots and close-knit families, struggled to process the horror. Cheryl's sister, Cindy, spoke to the Idaho Statesman, her voice thick with grief. "She was my rock, my confidant. This wasn't supposed to happen." Nadia's friend, Rebecca Lorenz, described Peyton as a bright light, her loss a devastating blow. Peyton's schoolmates at Ogden High School held a vigil, their candles flickering in the June dusk, their tears a testament to her kindness. The sheriff's office, under pressure to deliver answers, canvassed the area, interviewing neighbors and tracking Michael's financial records. His bank accounts, frozen after the murders, showed no activity, suggesting he'd planned his escape with cash or help from an unknown accomplice. As weeks turned to months, the case grew cold. The FBI expanded their search, coordinating with U.S. Marshals and park rangers in Wyoming, where Michael's truck was found. A ranger reported a possible sighting in Grand Teton, describing a man matching Michael's description camping alone, but the lead fizzled when the camper vanished. Detectives explored Michael's past, uncovering a history of charm and deception. Former colleagues in Ogden described him as charismatic but secretive, a man who kept his personal life guarded. His Air Force records, obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request, showed a decorated career but no red flags, no criminal history, no documented violence. Yet, his ability to juggle two relationships suggested a calculating nature, a man adept at compartmentalizing his life. Cheryl's family, desperate for closure, hired a private investigator, John Ramsey, who specialized in missing persons. Ramsey, a former detective, retraced Michael's movements, focusing on his piloting skills. "He knows how to disappear," Ramsey told KBOI News. "A man with his training could survive off the grid for years." Ramsey's team searched remote areas of Idaho and Wyoming, following tips about abandoned campsites, but found no trace. Nadia's family, led by her brother Mark Medley, channeled their grief into advocacy, pushing for stronger domestic violence laws. Mark, speaking at a press conference, his voice breaking, said, "Nadia and Peyton deserved better. We need to protect women from men like him." In 2020, a breakthrough seemed possible. A hiker in Montana's Bitterroot National Forest found a campsite with items matching Michael's description: a sleeping bag, a knife, and a map of the Rockies. The FBI tested the items for DNA, but the results were inconclusive. The case, now 3 years old, tested the resolve of the sheriff's office. Deputy Brian Peterson, who discovered the bodies, took the case personally, his nights spent reviewing files, chasing leads. "I see their faces every day," he told the Idaho Statesman. "Cheryl, Nadia, Peyton, they deserve justice." The community, too, refused to forget. Annual vigils, held at Caldwell's Memorial Park, drew hundreds, their candles a beacon for the lost women. The families, united by grief, formed an unlikely bond. Cindy and Mark Medley met regularly, sharing memories of Cheryl and Nadia, their pain a shared language. They created a scholarship in Peyton's name, supporting students pursuing veterinary science, a nod to her dream. Cheryl's garden, overgrown but still vibrant, became a memorial site, where neighbors left flowers and notes. The case, though unsolved, spurred changes in Canyon County. The sheriff's office implemented new training for domestic violence cases, recognizing the warning signs they'd missed. Michael's text to Cheryl's friend, the neighbor's report of a scream, small details that, in hindsight, could have saved lives. As of August 2025, Michael Bullinger remains at large, his whereabouts a mystery. The FBI's wanted poster, still active, describes him as a survivalist, likely armed, his skills honed by years in the Air Force. Some believe he's dead, succumbing to the harsh wilderness of the Rockies. Others, like Sheriff Donahue, suspect he's hiding, perhaps abroad, his pilot's license a ticket to obscurity. The Caldwell triple murder, covered by People, the Idaho Statesman, and KTVB, remains a wound in the community, a reminder of trust betrayed. Cheryl's sister, Cindy, visits the farmhouse site, now sold to new owners, her fingers tracing the fence where her sister once stood. Nadia's brother, Mark, keeps Peyton's photo on his desk, her smile a call to keep searching. Caldwell, a town of resilience, carries their story, a testament to love, loss, and the unyielding hope that justice, however delayed, will one day come. Story 5. The late autumn sun dipped low over the rolling fields of Whatcom County, Washington, on November 24, 1989, casting long shadows across the small town of Acme. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves, as 18-year-old Mandy Stavik stepped out of her family's farmhouse on Strand Road. Her blonde hair caught the fading light, and her athletic frame moved with purpose, clad in a gray sweatshirt, light blue sweatpants, and white running shoes. A freshman at Central Washington University, Mandy was home for Thanksgiving, eager to reconnect with her roots in this tight-knit community of dairy farms and winding roads. She was a star athlete, a cross-country runner whose determination had earned her a scholarship, and a beloved daughter whose smile could brighten even the gloomiest Pacific Northwest day. That afternoon, she set out for a jog, her German shepherd, Kyra, trotting at her side, the familiar rhythm of her steps echoing along the gravel path. Her mother, Mary Stavik, watched from the kitchen window, her heart warmed by the sight of her daughter, home and happy. She had no way of knowing it would be the last time she'd see Mandy alive. Mandy was the youngest of Mary and Glenn Stavik's 3 children, a bright light in a family that valued hard work and togetherness. Mary, a warm and resilient woman, had raised her kids with love and discipline, balancing her role as a mother with her job as a dental hygienist. Glenn, a quiet man with a deep connection to the land, ran the family's dairy farm, a sprawling operation that sustained their livelihood. Mandy, with her quick wit and infectious energy, was the heart of their home. She'd grown up exploring the fields and forests of Acme, a rural enclave where everyone knew each other, where doors stayed unlocked, and where the biggest excitement was the annual county fair. At Mount Baker High School, she'd been a standout, captain of the cross-country team, a cheerleader, and a student whose grades matched her drive. Her college dreams were just beginning, her future bright with promise. That day, as she jogged down Strand Road, her ponytail bouncing, she was simply a girl enjoying a break, unaware of the danger lurking in the quiet countryside. Mary busied herself with Thanksgiving preparations, the kitchen filled with the aroma of baking pies and the chatter of Mandy's older siblings, Molly and Mike, who were home for the holiday. The Staviks were a close family, their farmhouse a hub of laughter and tradition. Mandy had promised to be back within an hour, her run a familiar ritual along the familiar roads near the Nooksack River. But as the clock ticked past 4 p.m. and the sky turned to dusk, Mary's maternal instincts stirred. Mandy was punctual, her runs timed with precision. When Kyra, the family's loyal dog, scratched at the door alone, her fur damp and her demeanor agitated, a chill ran through Mary. She called Mandy's name, stepping onto the porch, her eyes scanning the empty road. The fields, usually a source of comfort, felt vast and foreboding. She dialed the Whatcom County Sheriff's Office, her voice trembling as she reported her daughter missing. The sheriff's deputies arrived quickly, their patrol cars crunching gravel as they pulled into the Stavik's driveway. Deputy Ron Peterson, a seasoned officer with a calm demeanor, took Mary's statement, noting Mandy's description. 5 feet 4 inches, 110 pounds, blonde hair, blue eyes, last seen in running clothes. The deputies fanned out, searching the roads and fields around Strand Road, their flashlights cutting through the gathering darkness. Neighbors joined in, their boots trudging through the damp grass, calling Smoothie's name. The community, small and interconnected, was stunned. A missing girl in Acme was unthinkable. The sheriff's office treated the case as urgent, dismissing any notion that Mandy had run away. She was a responsible kid, her life rooted in family and ambition. The discovery of Kyra, returned without Mandy, was a red flag. Dogs didn't abandon their owners, not without reason. The next morning, November 25th, brought no relief. The search intensified, with volunteers, local firefighters, and deputies combing the area. Helicopters buzzed overhead, their rotors chopping through the misty air, while divers searched the Nooksack River, its waters cold and murky. Mary and Glenn clung to hope, their hands clasped as they stood on the porch, watching the search unfold. The community rallied, bringing coffee and blankets to the volunteers, their faces etched with worry. Mandy's friends from Mount Baker High School joined the effort, their voices hoarse from calling her name. The local paper, the Bellingham Herald, ran a front-page story, and Seattle news stations picked up the case, broadcasting Mandy's photo. A smiling teenager in her cross-country uniform, her future stolen. Tips poured in, a jogger seen near the river, a girl on a nearby road, but each lead fizzled, leaving the Stavics grasping at fading hope. On November 26th, 2 days after Mandy vanished, a search team made a devastating discovery. In a shallow bend of the Nooksack River, about a mile from the Stavics' home, a volunteer spotted a flash of color in the water. It was Mandy, her body partially submerged, her running clothes torn. The scene was heartbreaking, her blonde hair tangled with river weeds, her face pale and still. The volunteers stepped back, their shouts silenced by grief, as deputies secured the area. The Whatcom County coroner, Dr. Gary Goldfogel, arrived, his face grim as he examined the body. Mandy had been beaten and strangled, her neck bruised, her skull fractured from blunt force trauma. Semen was found, indicating sexual assault, a violation that deepened the horror. The coroner estimated she'd been in the water for 1 to 2 days, her body carried downstream by the current. The news reached Mary and Glenn, delivered by Sheriff Larry Montague himself, his voice heavy with sorrow. Mary collapsed, her cries echoing across the farm, while Glenn stood frozen, his hands clenched, unable to process the loss of his youngest child. The Whatcom County Sheriff's Office launched a homicide investigation, led by Detective Mark Joseph, a meticulous investigator with a reputation for leaving no stone unturned. The crime scene offered little. Rain had washed away footprints, and the river had erased much of the physical evidence. The semen, preserved for DNA analysis, was a critical clue, but in 1989, DNA technology was in its infancy, limited to rudimentary tests that required large samples. The sheriff's office collected DNA from Mandy's clothing and body, storing it in hopes that future advancements would yield answers. They interviewed everyone in Mandy's orbit, friends, classmates, neighbors, even her high school boyfriend, Rick Zender, who was devastated and quickly cleared by an alibi. The focus turned to the community, a place where strangers were rare, but secrets could hide in plain sight. Acme, with its population of barely 1,000, was a web of interconnected lives. The Stavics' neighbors, many of them dairy farmers or loggers, were questioned, their routines scrutinized. The sheriff's office considered transient workers, common in the agricultural region, but no leads emerged. A tip about a suspicious truck near Strand Road led to a dead end when the driver, a local farmer, was cleared. The investigation zeroed in on the timeline. Mandy was last seen jogging around 2:30 p.m., her body found 48 hours later. The window of her disappearance was narrow, suggesting the killer acted quickly, perhaps someone who knew the area well. The presence of Kyra, unharmed but alone, puzzled investigators. Had the dog been scared off? Had Mandy been taken from the road, her run interrupted by a predator? Mary and Glenn became relentless advocates, their grief channeled into a quest for justice. Mary, her eyes red from sleepless nights, spoke to reporters, her voice steady despite the pain. "Mandy was our light," she told the Bellingham Herald. "We won't stop until we know who took her." Glenn, less vocal, searched the fields himself, his boots sinking into the mud, hoping for a clue the police had missed. The community mourned, holding vigils at the Acme Presbyterian Church, where candles flickered in memory of Mandy's smile. Her teammates from Mount Baker High School dedicated their cross-country season to her, running with ribbons pinned to their uniforms. But as weeks turned to months, the case grew cold. The DNA, unmatchable with 1989 technology, sat in evidence lockers, a silent promise of answers that seemed out of reach. Years passed, and the Stavic family's pain became a quiet constant. Mary kept Mandy's room untouched, her running trophies on the shelf, her favorite sweater folded on the bed. Glenn threw himself into the farm, his hands calloused from work, his heart heavy with loss. Molly and Mike, now adults, carried their sister's memory, their lives shaped by her absence. The Whatcom County Sheriff's Office never closed the case, but leads dwindled. Detectives chased tips: a drifter seen in Bellingham, a convicted sex offender in nearby Skagit County, but none panned out. The DNA, retested in the early 1990s as technology improved, yielded no matches in the limited databases of the time. The case haunted Detective Joseph, who kept Mandy's file on his desk, a reminder of unfinished business. In 2009, a breakthrough in forensic science offered hope. The Washington State Patrol Crime Laboratory, equipped with advanced DNA analysis, re-examined the evidence. The semen from Mandy's body was compared against Cody's, the national DNA database, but no hits emerged. The sheriff's office, now led by Detective Greg Ridgway, expanded the investigation, collecting voluntary DNA samples from men in Whatcom County who'd been in Acme in 1989. The process was slow, the community uneasy about the intrusion, but the Stavics supported it, desperate for answers. By 2013, over 80 men had been tested, including neighbors and former classmates, but the DNA remained unmatched. The case, now 24 years old, was a shadow over Acme, a wound that refused to heal. The turning point came in 2017, driven by an unlikely source, a cookie jar. Detective Kevin Bohe, who'd taken over the case, pursued a new angle: familial DNA. The semen suggested a male suspect, likely local, given the crime's precision. Bohe's team re-interviewed neighbors, focusing on the Bass family, who lived a quarter-mile from the Stavics. Timothy Bass, 51, a quiet man who worked as a delivery driver for Franz Bakery, had been a teenager in 1989, living with his family on Strand Road. His younger brother, Tom Bass, was also in the area at the time. Both had been questioned in the 1990s, but neither provided DNA, citing privacy concerns. Bohe, undeterred, learned that Timothy's co-worker, Kim Wagner, had grown suspicious of him. Bass had once remarked, unprompted, that he'd never give DNA, saying, "They're trying to blame me for Mandy's death." Wagner, uneasy, noticed Bass discard a Coke can and a plastic cup at work. She collected them, placing them in a Ziploc bag, and contacted the sheriff's office. On December 12, 2017, the items were tested at the state crime lab. The DNA matched the semen from Mandy's body, the odds of a random match 1 in 11 quadrillion. Timothy Bass was arrested that day at his home in Everson, charged with first-degree murder, rape, and kidnapping. The arrest stunned Acme. Bass, a married father of 3, was a familiar face, his delivery truck a fixture on local roads. His wife, Gina, was shocked, insisting he was a devoted husband. But the evidence was undeniable: his DNA, his proximity to the crime scene, his refusal to be tested. The investigation revealed a chilling portrait. In 1989, Timothy Bass was 22, a loner with a troubled past. Classmates described him as awkward, with a temper that flared under pressure. He'd dropped out of community college and worked odd jobs, living with his parents near the Stavics. Detectives believed he saw Mandy jogging that day, her route passing his family's property. The absence of forced entry suggested he lured her, perhaps offering a ride, then attacked her in a secluded spot near the river. Kyra's return suggested she'd fled during the assault, leaving Mandy alone. Bass, investigators theorized, panicked after the murder, dumping her body in the Nooksack River to erase evidence. His life since had been unremarkable, his clean record a mask for a crime that had haunted Acme for decades. The trial began on May 6, 2019, in the Whatcom County Superior Court, presided over by Judge Raquel Montoya Lewis. The courtroom was packed, Mary and Glenn in the front row, their faces etched with 30 years of pain. Prosecutor Dave McEachran, a veteran attorney, presented a compelling case. The DNA evidence was the cornerstone, backed by Wagner's testimony about Bass's suspicious behavior. Forensic experts confirmed the match, and detectives detailed the crime scene, the river's role in preserving evidence. Witnesses, including Mandy's high school friends, painted a picture of her life, her loss a wound still fresh. The defense, led by Lisa Pappas, argued reasonable doubt, claiming the DNA could have been contaminated or misidentified. They suggested another suspect, Tom Bass, Timothy's brother, who'd also refused DNA testing. But Tom, now living in California, provided a sample that cleared him. Bass took the stand, his demeanor cold, his answers evasive. He denied knowing Mandy, claimed he'd been at work the day she vanished, but his alibi crumbled under scrutiny. No co-workers could confirm his whereabouts. His explanation for the DNA, that he and Mandy might have had a consensual encounter, was met with gasps in the courtroom. Mandy's friends testified she'd never mentioned Bass, a claim her character supported. On May 24, 2019, after a 3-week trial, the jury deliberated for 6 hours. They returned a verdict, guilty on all counts. Mary sobbed, her hand gripping Glenn's as the courtroom exhaled. Judge Montoya Lewis sentenced Bass to life without parole, calling the crime a profound betrayal of a community's trust. The aftermath was a time of healing and reckoning. Mary and Glenn, though relieved, carried the weight of Mandy's absence. They established a scholarship in her name at Mount Baker High School, supporting student athletes, a tribute to her passion. The community, shaken by Bass's betrayal, grappled with the reality that a killer had lived among them unnoticed. Kim Wagner, hailed as a hero, spoke of her unease with Bass, her decision to collect his DNA driven by intuition. The Whatcom County Sheriff's Office, praised for its persistence, implemented new protocols for cold cases, leveraging DNA advancements. The Nooksack River, once a place of beauty, remained a somber reminder, its waters carrying Mandy's memory. Timothy Bass, now 58, is incarcerated at Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla, his appeals denied in 2020. The Staviks, forever changed, continue to honor Mandy. Mary keeps her daughter's running shoes in a glass case, a symbol of a life cut short. Glenn walks the farm, his thoughts with the girl who loved its fields. Acme, a town of quiet resilience, carries Mandy's story, a testament to love, loss, and the power of truth uncovered, no matter how long it takes. Story 6. The morning of June 9, 2017, dawned bright over Urbana, Illinois, the kind of day where the sun warmed the sprawling campus of the University of Illinois and the air carried the promise of summer. Yingying Zhang, a 26-year-old visiting scholar from China, stepped out of her apartment at Orchard Downs, a graduate housing complex, her dark hair pulled back, her petite frame clad in a teal jacket and jeans. She carried a backpack, her steps purposeful as she headed to catch a bus to an off-campus appointment. Yingying was a woman of quiet determination, her life a tapestry of ambition and resilience. Born in Nanping, Fujian Province, she'd grown up in a close-knit family, her parents' pride evident in their sacrifices to support her dreams. A top student, she'd earned a master's degree in environmental engineering from Peking University before arriving in Urbana to study photosynthesis and crop productivity, her work a bridge between her homeland and the world. That day, she was running late for a meeting to sign a lease for a new apartment, a small step towards settling into her American adventure. She never made it to the appointment, and her disappearance would unravel a chilling tale of predation, betrayal, and a community's desperate search for answers. Yingying was the only child of Rongao Zhang and Li Fengyi, a working-class couple who'd poured their hopes into their daughter. Rongao, a truck driver with calloused hands and a gentle demeanor, and Li Feng, a homemaker whose warmth anchored their modest home, had celebrated Yingying's every milestone. She was a prodigy, excelling in academics and music, her clarinet performances a source of local pride. At Zhejiang University, she'd met Xiaolin Ho, her boyfriend, whose steady presence complemented her drive. When Ying was accepted as a visiting scholar at the University of Illinois, it was a triumph, a chance to work under renowned scientist Evan DeLucia. She arrived in April 2017, her English halting but her enthusiasm boundless, quickly endearing herself to colleagues with her shy smile and relentless work ethic. Her journal, found later, revealed her dreams: to contribute to science, to honor her parents, to build a life with Xiaolin. That Friday morning, Ying left Orchard Downs around 1:30 p.m., her phone buzzing with messages to Xiaolin, who was back in China. She'd missed her bus, the MTD 22 Illini, and was hurrying to catch another. Surveillance cameras captured her at the corner of Goodwin Avenue and Clark Street, standing at a bus stop, her teal jacket a splash of color against the gray pavement. She texted a property manager, apologizing for her delay, promising to be at the leasing office by 2:10 p.m. A few minutes later, a black Saturn Astra pulled up beside her. The driver, a man, leaned toward the passenger window, and after a brief exchange, Ying climbed in. The car drove off, disappearing into the quiet streets of Urbana. It was 2:04 p.m., the last time she was seen alive. By evening, Ying's absence sparked concern. Her colleague Jing Hongyang expected her back at the lab, where they'd planned to review data. Her phone, usually alive with updates, was silent. Jing, a fellow Chinese scholar, called her, but the line went to voicemail. He contacted Xiaolin, who was in Nanping, and the two pieced together her last movements. Xiaolin, alarmed by the time difference and his distance, urged Jing to check with the property manager. The manager confirmed Ying never arrived. By 9 p.m., Jing and other friends gathered at Orchard Downs, knocking on her door, finding her apartment empty. Her laptop sat open, her research notes neatly stacked, a half-eaten bowl of noodles on the counter, a snapshot of a life interrupted. They called the University of Illinois police, their voices tight with worry, reporting Ying missing. The police response was swift. Lieutenant Matt Myrick, a seasoned officer, took the report, noting Ying's description: 5 feet 4 inches, 110 pounds, long black hair, last seen in a teal jacket. The university police, accustomed to minor incidents on campus, recognized the gravity of a missing international student. They pinged Ying's phone, but it was off or out of service. Surveillance footage from the bus stop, obtained from the Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District, showed the black Saturn Astra, its distinctive chrome trim and sunroof clear under the midday sun. The police issued a missing person alert, plastering Ying's photo across campus and local news outlets like the News Gazette. The Chinese student community, tight-knit and protective, rallied, distributing flyers in English and Mandarin, their footsteps echoing through Urbana's streets as they searched for their friend. The FBI joined the case on June 10th, classifying Ying's disappearance as a possible kidnapping, a rare crime in Urbana, a town of 40,000 where violent crime was low. Special Agent John Holloway, a veteran investigator, led the effort, coordinating with local police and the university. The black Saturn Astra became the focal point, its image broadcast on CNN, NBC, and international outlets like China Daily, which covered Ying's case as her parents prepared to fly from China. Rong Gao and Li Feng landed in Chicago on June 11th, their faces etched with exhaustion and fear, clutching photos of their daughter. They met with FBI agents, their limited English no barrier to their desperation. "Find her," Rong Gao pleaded through a translator, his voice breaking. Li Feng, clutching a scarf Ying had worn, wept silently, her hope tethered to the promise of American law enforcement. The investigation moved with relentless precision. The FBI traced the Saturn Astra, a rare model with fewer than 20 registered in Champaign County. By June 12th, they identified a vehicle matching the description, parked near an apartment complex at 2503 West Springfield Avenue. It belonged to Brent Christensen, a 27-year-old former physics graduate student at the University of Illinois. Christensen, a wiry man with short brown hair and a guarded demeanor, lived with his wife, Michelle, and their toddler. The FBI surveilled him, noting his routine: trips to a local gym, errands in the Saturn. On June 14th, agents approached him at his apartment, requesting an interview. He agreed, his tone casual, claiming he'd been home playing video games on June 9th. But his phone records showed otherwise. His device had pinged near the bus stop at 2:04 p.m., the exact time Ying was last seen. Christensen's background raised red flags. Born in Wisconsin, he'd moved to Urbana in 2013 to pursue a PhD in physics, specializing in condensed matter. He was brilliant, his professors said, but struggled with deadlines and focus, dropping out in 2016 after failing his qualifying exams. He'd since worked odd jobs, his marriage strained by financial stress and his growing obsession with true crime. His internet history, later uncovered, revealed visits to fetish websites and forums like Reddit's Abducted in Plain Sight, where he posted about kidnapping fantasies. He'd read American Psycho and researched serial killers, including Ted Bundy, whose tactics he studied. The FBI, alarmed, obtained a warrant for his phone and car. On June 15th, a search of the Saturn Astra revealed a cracked passenger-side hubcap, matching the footage from the bus stop. Fibers in the car were consistent with Ying's clothing, though no blood or DNA was found. Christensen's phone showed searches for perfect abduction and how to dispose of a body days before June 9th. The evidence was circumstantial but mounting. The FBI placed him under surveillance, tailing him as he moved through Urbana, his behavior increasingly erratic. On June 29th, agents intercepted a chilling clue. Christensen attended a vigil for Ying on campus, organized by the Chinese Students and Scholars Association. Hidden microphones captured him speaking to his girlfriend, Tara Bullis, whom he'd begun dating after separating from his wife. "She's gone forever," he whispered, describing how he'd taken someone, how it felt powerful. Bullis, horrified, contacted the FBI the next day, agreeing to wear a wire. Bullis's recordings, made over several days, were damning. Christensen, unaware he was being recorded, boasted about abducting Ying, claiming he'd lured her into his car with the promise of a ride. He described taking her to his apartment, where he attempted to assault her. When she fought back, he said, he panicked, striking her and strangling her. He admitted to disposing of her body, though he was vague about the location, saying only that no one would find her. The recordings, combined with the car evidence and phone data, gave the FBI probable cause. On June 30th, 2017, Christensen was arrested, charged with kidnapping resulting in death. The arrest, announced publicly, sent shockwaves through Urbana. The university, a beacon of learning, was now the backdrop for a tragedy that shattered its sense of safety. The search for Ying's body became a priority, but Christensen's silence complicated efforts. The FBI scoured his apartment, finding traces of bleach and signs of a recent deep clean. No blood or DNA linked directly to Ying, but the absence of her body didn't weaken the case. The U.S. Attorney's Office, led by Eugene Miller, built a prosecution based on the recordings, surveillance footage, and forensic evidence. Ying's parents, devastated but resolute, stayed in Urbana, living in a small apartment provided by the university. They attended every court hearing, their faces stoic as translators relayed the proceedings. Li Feng clutched Ying's scarf, her tears a silent prayer for closure. Rong Gao, his health deteriorating under the stress, spoke to reporters, his voice firm. "We need justice for our daughter." The trial began on June 3, 2019, in the U.S. District Court in Peoria, Illinois, presided over by Judge James Shadid. The courtroom was packed, Ying's family in the front row, their pain palpable. Prosecutor Miller presented a meticulous case, playing Bullis's recordings, which chilled the gallery. Christensen's voice, cold and detached, described Ying's final moments, his lack of remorse stark. FBI agents testified about the Saturn Astra, the phone data, and Christensen's internet history, painting a portrait of a calculated predator. Forensic experts confirmed the fibers, the hubcap match, and the bleach in his apartment. The defense, led by Elizabeth Pollock, argued the recordings were coerced, claiming Bullis manipulated Christensen into confessing. They suggested Ying might have left voluntarily, but the claim rang hollow against the evidence. Christensen did not testify, his silence a stark contrast to his earlier boasts. On June 24, 2019, after a 2-week trial, the jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. They found Christensen guilty of kidnapping and murder. The penalty phase followed, with prosecutors seeking the death penalty, a rare request in Illinois, where capital punishment had been abolished in 2011 but remained applicable for federal crimes. Yingying's family testified, their statements raw. Li Feng, through tears, described her daughter's dreams, her clarinet, her kindness. Rong Gao, his voice breaking, begged for justice, saying, "She was our only child." The defense called Christensen's mother, Ellen, who pleaded for her son's life, describing his troubled childhood and mental health struggles. On July 18, 2019, the jury, unable to reach a unanimous decision on the death penalty, sentenced Christensen to life without parole. Judge Shadid, addressing Christensen, called the crime heinous, noting the unimaginable loss to Yingying's family. The aftermath was a tapestry of grief and resilience. Yingying's body was never found, a wound that deepened her family's pain. The FBI searched landfills, fields, and rivers, guided by Christensen's vague hints, but the trail was cold. Rong Gao and Li Feng returned to China in 2020, their health frail, their hearts heavy. They established the Yingying Fund, a scholarship for Chinese students studying abroad, a tribute to their daughter's dreams. The University of Illinois created a memorial garden, a quiet space where students left flowers and notes in Mandarin. The Chinese community in Urbana, shaken by the loss, organized safety workshops, urging vigilance. Xiaolin Ho, Yingying's boyfriend, spoke at a memorial, his voice steady as he promised to honor her through his own work in science. Christensen, now 33, is incarcerated at USP Marion, a federal prison in Illinois, his appeals denied in 2021. His wife, Michelle, divorced him, rebuilding her life away from the spotlight. Tara Bullis, hailed as a hero, struggled with the trauma of her role, moving away from Urbana. The case, covered by the New York Times, BBC, and Xinhua, sparked debates about campus safety and the vulnerability of international students. The University of Illinois implemented new security measures, including more cameras and escort services. Urbana, once a quiet college town, carries Yingying's legacy, a reminder of dreams cut short, of a family's enduring love, and of a community's resolve to seek justice, no matter the cost. Story 7. The late summer sun filtered through the curtains of Olga Tsvy's modest apartment in Forest Hills, Queens, on August 28, 2016, casting a warm glow over the cozy living room. Olga, a 35-year-old Ukrainian beautician with dark hair and a gentle smile, was preparing for an unexpected visit. Her client, Victoria Nazirova, had called earlier that day, her voice urgent, insisting on an emergency eyelash appointment. Olga, known for her meticulous work at a nearby salon, hesitated. She preferred to keep her professional and personal lives separate, but Victoria's persistence was hard to ignore. The Russian woman, with her striking resemblance to Olga, dark hair, olive skin, high cheekbones, had been a regular client, though her pushy demeanor often left Olga uneasy. Victoria arrived that afternoon, clutching a small box from a renowned Brooklyn bakery, its logo promising the creamy decadence of cheesecake. What unfolded in the hours that followed would unravel a chilling tale of deception, poison, and a desperate bid to steal a life, leaving a community shaken and a woman fighting for survival. Olga Tsvyk had built a quiet life in New York since immigrating from Ukraine. Born in a small village near Kiev, she'd grown up with dreams of independence, her nimble fingers finding their calling in beauty work. In her late 20s, she moved to Queens, a melting pot of cultures where she found a sense of belonging among other Eastern European immigrants. Her one-bedroom apartment, adorned with family photos and a small Orthodox icon, was her sanctuary. She worked long hours at the salon, her steady hands applying eyelash extensions with precision, earning her a loyal clientele. Olga was reserved but kind, her soft accent and warm laugh putting clients at ease. She sent money home to her aging parents, her letters filled with promises to visit when she could afford it. Life wasn't lavish, but it was hers, built on hard work and quiet pride. Victoria Nazirova, 39, was a stark contrast. Born in Krasnodar, Russia, she'd arrived in New York in 2014, fleeing a past shrouded in shadows. Victoria was charismatic, her sharp wit and commanding presence drawing people in, but there was an edge to her charm. She worked in the adult industry as a dominatrix, her online ads promising control and allure. Her Brooklyn apartment, cluttered with designer clothes and empty wine bottles, hinted at a life of excess, but also desperation. Victoria had a young son in Russia, reportedly in need of a bone marrow transplant, a detail she shared sparingly, her eyes darkening with each mention. Her mental health struggles, untreated and unspoken, simmered beneath her polished exterior. She was a woman on the run, not just from her past, but from a red notice issued by Interpol for a 2014 murder in Russia, a crime she'd never faced in court. That August day, Victoria's visit to Olga's apartment seemed routine at first. She breezed in, her perfume sharp, her smile disarming. She placed the cheesecake box on Olga's kitchen counter, insisting they share a treat before starting the eyelash work. Olga, polite but cautious, watched as Victoria ate 2 slices, her enthusiasm almost performative. "Try it, it's delicious," Victoria urged, pushing the remaining slice toward Olga. The cheesecake was rich, its creamy texture masking a faint, bitter aftertaste. Olga, trusting her client's gesture, took small bites, unaware that the slice was laced with phenazepam, a potent Russian tranquilizer. Within minutes, her vision blurred, her stomach churned, and a wave of dizziness forced her to lie down. Victoria watched, her expression unreadable, as Olga's world faded to black. The next morning, Olga's friend, Natalia, grew worried. Olga hadn't answered her texts, unusual for someone so reliable. Natalia, a fellow Ukrainian who lived nearby, drove to Forest Hills, her heart pounding as she knocked on Olga's door. No response. She used a spare key, stepping into the stifling apartment. The heat was on full blast, despite the August warmth. In Olga's bedroom, Natalia found her friend unconscious, clad in lingerie she didn't own, pills scattered across the floor like a staged scene of despair. Panic surged as Natalia called 911, her voice trembling as she described Olga's shallow breathing. Paramedics rushed Olga to New York Presbyterian Queens, where doctors fought to stabilize her. Tests revealed phenazepam in her system, a drug not prescribed in the U.S., its presence a chilling clue. Olga, teetering on the edge of a heart attack, was 40 minutes from death, doctors later said. When Olga regained consciousness days later, her apartment told a story of betrayal. Her Ukrainian passport, U.S. work permit, a gold ring, and $4,000 in cash were gone. The cheesecake box, discarded in her trash, bore traces of phenazepam, confirmed by the Drug Enforcement Administration. Olga's memory was fragmented, but she recalled Victoria's visit, the cheesecake, the sudden illness. She told Detective Kevin Rogers, a 20-year veteran of the NYPD, her story, her voice weak but resolute. Rogers, a gruff but empathetic officer, initially doubted Olga's account, suspecting drug use or exaggeration. The scattered pills, the lingerie, it looked like a suicide attempt. But Olga's insistence, coupled with the cheesecake container, kept the case alive. Rogers sent the evidence to the lab, his instincts nagging that something was terribly wrong. The investigation gained traction when Olga returned to work, sharing her ordeal with clients. One client connected her to Ruben Borikov, a 54-year-old dry cleaner who'd met Victoria on a Russian dating site in 2016. Ruben, a jovial man with a knack for storytelling, recounted a chilling parallel. Victoria had invited him to her Brooklyn apartment for dinner, serving fish that left him unconscious within minutes. He awoke to find $2,600 charged to his American Express, his watch and cash gone. Surveillance footage from his shop showed Victoria, calm and composed, spinning lies to his employees about his condition. Ruben's story, reported to the NYPD, added weight to Olga's claims, painting Victoria as a serial predator who used drugs to rob her victims. The hunt for Victoria intensified, but she was elusive. Her Sheepshead Bay apartment, a hub of Russian culture in Brooklyn, was a revolving door of clients and aliases. Enter Herman Weisberg, a retired NYPD detective-turned-private investigator, whose sleuthing would prove pivotal. Weisberg was hired by Nadia Ford, a Russian woman whose mother, Alla Alexenko, had vanished in Krasnodar in 2014. Nadia, living in New York, suspected Victoria, Alla's former neighbor, of murder. Alla, a 54-year-old widow, had trusted Victoria, sharing her life savings and plans to send gifts to Nadia. When Alla disappeared, her body was found burned in a forest, her money gone. Victoria fled to the U.S. soon after, a red notice trailing her for the murder. Weisberg's investigation was meticulous. In early 2017, unable to sleep, he scoured Victoria's Facebook, noticing a photo of her in a car, the white stitching on the headrest and dashboard reflection catching his eye. He identified the car as a Chrysler 300, a detail he confirmed by combing parking lots in Brooklyn. In Sheepshead Bay, his team found a matching vehicle, its license plate leading to an address on Voorhees Avenue. The building's reflection in Victoria's sunglasses matched the photo, a stroke of detective brilliance. Weisberg's final clue was her beige suede shoes, seen in both surveillance footage and her social media. On March 20, 2017, he tipped off Brooklyn detectives, who arrested Victoria at her apartment, finding Olga's ID among her possessions. Victoria's arrest was a turning point, but her trial was delayed by legal wrangling and the COVID-19 pandemic. Held at Rikers Island, she maintained her innocence, her 2018 interview with CBS's 48 Hours revealing a defiant woman. "I didn't force her to eat it," she said of Olga, her accented English sharp. Charged with attempted murder, assault, unlawful imprisonment, and theft, Victoria faced a mountain of evidence. The cheesecake container with her DNA, Olga's stolen belongings, Rubin's testimony, and her Russian past. Prosecutors, led by Assistant District Attorney Konstantinos Liturgis, painted a portrait of a ruthless con artist who targeted Olga to steal her identity, likely to evade extradition for Alla's murder. The trial, held in January 2023 at Queen's Supreme Court, was a spectacle. Olga, now 42, testified with quiet strength, her voice breaking as she described the betrayal. "I trusted her," she said, recounting the terror of waking to find her life upended. Rubin's testimony added weight, his jovial demeanor replaced by anger as he described Victoria's theft. The prosecution played surveillance footage, showed the cheesecake container, and presented phenazepam's chemical profile, its rarity in the U.S. underscoring Victoria's intent. The defense, led by Jose Nieves, argued Olga's memory was unreliable, suggesting the pills indicated a suicide attempt. But the jury, after a week and a half of testimony, deliberated for less than 2 hours. On February 9, 2023, they found Victoria guilty on all counts. Sentencing came on April 19, 2023, before Justice Kenneth Holder. Olga faced Victoria in court, her statement raw. "God gave me life when Victoria tried to end it." She spoke of sleepless nights, her fear of Victoria returning to finish what she started. The judge, unmoved by Victoria's lack of remorse, sentenced her to 21 years in prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. Victoria's outburst, F***KU, as she was led away shocked the courtroom, a final act of defiance reported by the New York Post and BBC. The possibility of deportation to Russia, where she faces charges for Alla's murder, loomed over her future. The aftermath was bittersweet. Olga, scarred but resilient, rebuilt her life, returning to her salon but wary of new clients. She moved to a new apartment, her trust in others shaken. Nadia Ford, whose mother's death spurred Weisberg's investigation, found solace in Victoria's conviction, though her grief for Alla remained raw. The Russian community in Queens, tight-knit and protective, grappled with the case's fallout, their trust in neighbors tested. Detective Rogers, reflecting on his initial doubts, apologized to Olga, his respect for her courage evident. Weisberg, hailed as a hero, continued his work, his knack for detail a testament to old-school detective work. Victoria, now 47, is incarcerated at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, her release not expected until the 2030s. Her story, covered by CBS, BBC, and the New York Post, sparked debates about identity theft and the dangers of unchecked predators. Olga's survival, a miracle born of quick intervention, became a beacon of hope. In Forest Hills, the bakery that supplied the cheesecake distanced itself from the crime, its reputation intact but its name forever linked to a dark chapter. The case, a blend of cunning and cruelty, lingers in New York's memory, a cautionary tale of trust betrayed and the enduring strength of those who survive. Story 8. The morning of August 24th, 2019, broke over Fort Smith, Arkansas, with a sky heavy with rain, the kind of relentless downpour that turned streets into rivers and tested the resilience of a city accustomed to the whims of the Arkansas River. Deborah Stevens, a 47-year-old newspaper carrier, navigated her silver SUV through the pre-dawn darkness, her headlights cutting through sheets of rain. She was a familiar figure in Fort Smith, a woman whose quiet determination defined her life. Delivering the Southwest Times record was more than a job for Deborah. It was a lifeline, a way to support herself after years of health struggles and personal loss. Her route took her through the quiet streets of Kincaid Avenue, where modest homes lined the road, their windows dark at 4:30 a.m. But that morning, as floodwaters rose, Deborah's routine turned into a nightmare. Trapped in her vehicle, surrounded by rising water, she dialed 911, her voice trembling with fear. The call, meant to summon help, would instead become a haunting record of desperation, exposing a failure that would shake a community and spark a national reckoning. Deborah Stevens was a woman of quiet strength, her life shaped by perseverance. Born in Fort Smith, she'd grown up in a working-class family, her childhood filled with the simple joys of Arkansas summers, fishing with her father, helping her mother tend their small garden. Deborah was shy but kind, her hazel eyes reflecting a warmth that drew people to her. She'd married young, but the marriage ended in divorce, leaving her to raise her daughter, Emily, alone. A breast cancer diagnosis in her 30s tested her resolve, but Deborah fought through chemotherapy, her humor and faith carrying her forward. By 2019, she was a grandmother, her life revolving around Emily and her grandson, her modest apartment adorned with their photos. Her job at the Southwest Times Record, delivering papers in the early hours, suited her. She loved the solitude, the rhythm of her route, the sense of purpose it gave her. That morning, Deborah's route began as usual. She loaded her SUV with newspapers, her hands quick and practiced, her radio tuned to a soft country station. Fort Smith had been under a flash flood warning, the National Weather Service forecasting heavy rain. But Deborah, like many in the city, was used to navigating stormy weather. Kincaid Avenue, a low-lying street near a drainage creek, was part of her daily path. Around 4:30 a.m., as she turned onto the road, a surge of water swept across her vehicle, lifting it from the pavement. The SUV lurched, carried by the current, and came to rest in a stand of trees, the water rising swiftly around it. Deborah, trapped inside, fumbled for her phone, her heart pounding as she dialed 911. The call connected at 4:38 a.m., her voice breaking through the static. "I'm in water. My car's floating. I can't get out, and I'm scared." The 911 operator, Donna Renault, was nearing the end of her shift at the Fort Smith Police Department's dispatch center. A 23-year-old college student, Renault had worked as a dispatcher for 5 years, her voice a familiar presence on the city's emergency lines. She was known for her efficiency, her ability to handle multiple calls under pressure, but that morning, her tone would become the center of a storm. As Deborah's call came through, Renault answered, her voice calm but clipped. "Where are you at?" she asked, typing the details into her system. Deborah, her words tumbling out, explained her location near Kincaid Avenue. her panic rising as water seeped into the SUV. "I'm going to die," she cried, the sound of splashing water audible in the background. Renault responded, "You're not going to die. Hold on." But as the call stretched on, 22 minutes of agonizing dialogue, Renault's patience frayed. Deborah, increasingly desperate, described the water reaching her chest, her phone battery dying, her prayers for rescue fervent. "I'm scared. I've never been in anything like this," she said, her voice breaking. Renault, juggling other calls from the flooding city, grew frustrated. "You're not going to die, okay? I don't know why you're freaking out," she said, her tone sharp. "You shouldn't have driven into the water." Deborah, sobbing, apologized, explaining she hadn't seen the flood until it was too late. "I'm going to drown," she repeated, her words a plea. Renault's response was cold. "You're not going to drown. You need to calm down." The exchange, recorded and later released, would haunt listeners, a stark contrast to the empathy expected in a crisis. Fort Smith's emergency response was stretched thin that morning. The city, hit by record rainfall, faced widespread flooding, with roads closed and residents stranded. Firefighters and police were deployed across multiple scenes, their radios crackling with urgent calls. Deborah's location, relayed by Renault, was dispatched to the Fort Smith Fire Department, but the address was imprecise. Kincaid Avenue was long, and the flooding made navigation treacherous. Firefighter Captain Jason Alexander, a veteran first responder, led a team toward the area, their truck battling through waterlogged streets. They searched for Deborah's SUV, their flashlights cutting through the rain, but the trees and debris obscured her vehicle. By the time they located it, nearly an hour after her call, the water had risen above the windows. Divers broke into the SUV, finding Deborah unresponsive, her body submerged. Paramedics attempted CPR, but it was too late. At 5:58 a.m., Deborah Stevens was pronounced dead, her cause of death listed as drowning. The Fort Smith Police Department, led by Chief Danny Baker, launched an internal investigation, prompted by Deborah's family. Emily, her daughter, was devastated, her grief laced with anger. She'd listened to the 911 call, released to the family under Arkansas's Freedom of Information Act, and was horrified by Renault's tone. "My mom was begging for help, and she was scolded," Emily told the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, her voice trembling. The call, later obtained by local media like KFSM-TV, sparked outrage when it was made public on August 29, 2019. Listeners across the country, from CNN to the New York Times, heard Deborah's pleas and Renault's dismissive responses, igniting a firestorm of criticism. Social media, particularly posts on X, amplified the anger, with users calling for accountability, some labeling Renault's conduct heartless. Chief Baker, a seasoned leader with a reputation for fairness, faced a public relations crisis. In a press conference, his face etched with strain, he described the call as disturbing, but defended Renault's overall record. "She was under pressure, handling multiple emergencies," he said, noting that Renault had dispatched help immediately. The investigation found no criminal wrongdoing. Renault had followed protocol by relaying Deborah's location, but her lack of empathy violated department standards. Renault, who'd submitted her resignation 2 weeks before the incident for a new job, was allowed to leave without further discipline, a decision that fueled public fury. Emily, speaking to reporters, demanded more. "She didn't even try to comfort my mom. That's not right." The case wasn't a traditional crime, but it raised questions of negligence and duty. Deborah's family, led by Emily and her husband, Mark, filed a civil lawsuit against the city of Fort Smith and Renault, alleging wrongful death and emotional distress. The suit, filed in Sebastian County Circuit Court in 2020, argued that Renault's failure to provide accurate location details delayed the response, costing Deborah her life. The city's attorneys countered that the flooding, not Renault's actions, was the primary cause, citing the chaotic conditions and multiple simultaneous emergencies. The lawsuit, covered by the Washington Post and BBC, highlighted systemic issues: understaffed dispatch centers, inadequate flood response training, and the emotional toll on 911 operators. A judge dismissed the case in 2021, ruling that Renault's actions didn't meet the threshold for gross negligence, but the decision left Emily hollow. "No one's been held accountable," she said, her voice heavy with loss. The investigation revealed gaps in Fort Smith's emergency system. The dispatch center, housed in a nondescript building near the police station, was understaffed, with only 3 operators on duty that morning. Renault, working a 12-hour shift, had handled 40 calls before Deborah's, her stress compounded by the city's worst flooding in decades. The fire department, stretched across 15 rescue operations, struggled with outdated GPS systems, unable to pinpoint Deborah's SUV in the chaos. A post-incident report, commissioned by the city and reported by the Southwest Times Record, recommended upgrades. Better training for dispatchers, real-time mapping technology, and mandatory empathy protocols. Chief Baker implemented the changes, his department chastened by the tragedy. "We failed Deborah," he admitted in a 2020 interview, his eyes downcast. Deborah's death resonated beyond Fort Smith. Her story, amplified by national media, sparked debates about 911 operator training and the psychological demands of the job. Experts, quoted in the New York Times, noted that dispatchers, often underpaid and overworked, faced burnout, their empathy eroded by relentless calls. Renault, who declined interviews, became a lightning rod, her name synonymous with the case's failure. Posts on X speculated about her motives, some falsely claiming she'd ignored Deborah deliberately, though no evidence supported this. The truth was simpler but no less painful. A young operator, overwhelmed and untrained in crisis de-escalation, had faltered when compassion was needed most. Emily and Mark channeled their grief into advocacy. They established a foundation in Deborah's name, raising funds for flood safety education and dispatcher training. At a 2020 memorial, held at Kincaid Avenue where Deborah died, Emily spoke to a crowd of neighbors, her voice steady. "My mom loved this city. She'd want us to learn from this, to save others." The community, shaken by the loss, rallied around the family, their flowers and candles lining the street where Deborah's SUV once stood. Fort Smith, a city of 90,000, prided itself on its resilience, but Deborah's death exposed its vulnerabilities. The Arkansas River, a lifeline for the region, had turned deadly, its waters claiming a woman whose only crime was doing her job. By 2025, the case remained a touchstone for reform. The Fort Smith Police Department, under new leadership, introduced annual training on empathy and crisis management, a direct response to Deborah's death. The city installed flood sensors along low-lying roads, their data linked to dispatch systems to prevent future tragedies. Emily, now a mother of 2, visits her mother's grave at Oak Cemetery, her grandson clutching her hand. She keeps Deborah's newspaper bag, its worn canvas a reminder of her mother's dedication. The 911 call, though painful, is played at training seminars nationwide, a sobering lesson in the human cost of failure. Deborah's story, covered by The Guardian and local outlets like KFSM-TV, lingers as a cautionary tale. It's not a murder in the legal sense, but a death that could have been prevented, a life lost to systemic flaws and human error. Fort Smith, forever changed, honors Deborah through small acts, plaques at the dispatch center, a scholarship for single mothers, a renewed commitment to those who call for help in the dark. The rain still falls on Kincaid Avenue, but its echoes carry Deborah's voice, a plea for rescue that, though unanswered, drives the city to do better. Story 9. The summer sun hung low over Conway, Arkansas, on August 15, 2012, casting long shadows across the quiet cul-de-sac of River Valley Loop. The air was thick with the scent of freshly mowed grass and blooming crepe myrtles, a typical afternoon in this small, tight-knit community where neighbors knew each other's routines. Pamela Sue Reimer, a 55-year-old mother and office worker, was at home, her modest brick house a haven of order and warmth. Known for her radiant smile and tireless devotion to her family, Pamela was the heart of her household, her days filled with work at a local insurance agency, gardening, and caring for her 2 grown children, Brandon and Brittany. That evening, she was expecting a quiet night, perhaps tending to her flower beds or catching up on paperwork. But as dusk settled, a knock at her door would set in motion a tragedy that would unravel a web of deceit, betrayal, and a chilling crime that shook Conway to its core. Pamela Sue Reimer was a woman of resilience and grace, her life a testament to the strength found in ordinary moments. Born in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1957, she'd grown up in a working-class family, her childhood marked by simple joys, baking with her mother, fishing with her father along the Arkansas River. Pamela was a natural caretaker, her warmth drawing people in like moths to a flame. She married young, to a man named David Reimer, and though their marriage ended in divorce by the early 2000s, it gave her Brandon and Brittany, her greatest treasures. Pamela worked as an administrative assistant at Shelter Insurance, her desk adorned with photos of her kids and her beloved garden. Her home on River Valley Loop, purchased after the divorce, was her sanctuary, its walls lined with family portraits, its backyard a riot of roses and zinnias. She was a woman of faith, active in her church, her alto voice a steady presence in the choir. Pamela's life wasn't without challenges. The divorce had left her financially strained, but she managed, her frugality a point of pride. She was close to her children, both in their 20s, though Brandon, a quiet young man with a penchant for computers, had moved back home temporarily after struggling to find steady work. Brittany, studying nursing at the University of Central Arkansas, was Pamela's confidant, their late-night talks filled with laughter and dreams. Pamela's social circle was small but loyal. Her best friend, Linda Harper, a fellow churchgoer, often joined her for coffee, their conversations a blend of gossip and faith. In the summer of 2012, Pamela seemed content, her life a steady rhythm of work, family, and community. But beneath the surface, a shadow loomed, one tied to a man she'd met through her church, Larry Barnett. The evening of August 15th began like any other. Pamela had returned from work, her purse slung over the kitchen counter, her gardening gloves tossed near the sink. Brandon was out, visiting a friend, leaving the house quiet. Around 7 p.m., neighbors later reported seeing a familiar figure at Pamela's door. Larry Barnett, a 51-year-old mechanic and handyman known in Conway for his charming smile and quick temper. Larry, a regular at Pamela's church, had struck up a friendship with her in recent months, offering to help with home repairs. His presence wasn't unusual. He'd fixed her leaky faucet, mowed her lawn, even joined her for coffee on her porch. But their relationship, though friendly, had a tension Pamela confided to Linda. Larry's attention felt intense, his offers of help sometimes laced with expectation. Pamela, polite but cautious, kept him at arm's length, unaware of the darkness he carried. By 8 p.m., Pamela's phone went silent. Brittany, studying at her dorm, texted her mother about a class project, expecting a quick reply. None came. Linda, who'd planned to call Pamela about a church event, got voicemail. By 10 p.m., Brandon returned home, his heart sinking at the sight of the open front door, the living room light blazing. The house was eerily still, the air heavy with an unfamiliar scent, cleaner, perhaps, or something sharper. Pamela's purse was on the counter, her keys inside, but she was gone. Her car, a silver Honda Accord, sat in the driveway untouched. Brandon, his panic rising, searched the house, finding no sign of a struggle but noticing the back door slightly ajar. He called 911, his voice trembling as he reported his mother missing. The Conway Police Department responded swiftly. Officer Michael Welsh, a veteran with a calm demeanor, arrived at River Valley Loop, his flashlight sweeping the yard. The house showed no obvious signs of forced entry, but the open doors raised alarms. Welsh noted Pamela's belongings, her purse, phone, and glasses, left behind, unusual for a woman known for her meticulousness. He interviewed Brandon, who mentioned Larry Barnett's frequent visits, a detail that piqued Welsh's interest. The police issued a missing person alert. Pamela's photo, a smiling woman with short blonde hair and bright blue eyes, circulated on local news like KATV and the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. The community rallied, neighbors organizing search parties, their footsteps crunching through the woods behind Pamela's home, their voices calling her name into the night. The investigation, led by Detective Sarah Hargrove, a tenacious officer with a knack for detail, took a serious turn by August 16th. Pamela's disappearance wasn't typical for Conway, a city of 60,000 where violent crime was rare. Hargrove's team canvassed River Valley Loop, interviewing neighbors who recalled seeing Larry's blue pickup truck parked at Pamela's house around 7:30 p.m. One neighbor, Ellen Carter, mentioned hearing a muffled argument, followed by a loud thud, but dismissed it as a TV. Hargrove's instincts honed in on Larry, a man with a history that raised red flags. Born in Conway, Larry had a rap sheet, petty theft, a bar fight, a 2005 domestic violence charge that was dropped when his ex-wife recanted. He worked odd jobs, his mechanic skills in demand, but his temper made him unreliable. His recent fixation on Pamela, noted by church members, suggested a motive. On August 17th, police brought Larry in for questioning. He was cooperative, his drawl easy, his hands calloused from work. He claimed he'd visited Pamela to discuss a landscaping job, leaving by 8 p.m. when she said she was tired. His story was smooth, but inconsistencies emerged. His phone pinged near Pamela's house at 9:15 p.m., contradicting his timeline. A search of his truck, parked at his trailer on Old Morrilton Highway, revealed traces of bleach and a small bloodstain on the passenger seat. Forensic tests, later confirmed by the Arkansas State Crime Lab, matched the blood to Pamela's DNA, a breakthrough reported by the Log Cabin Democrat. Larry, confronted with the evidence, grew evasive, his charm replaced by a cold stare. On August 20th, he was arrested for suspicion of kidnapping, held at the Faulkner County Detention Center. The search for Pamela intensified. Volunteers, led by Brittany and Brandon, scoured Conway's parks and riverbanks, their hope fading with each day. The police, guided by Larry's phone data, focused on a wooded area near Lake Conway, a 10-minute drive from Pamela's home. On August 25th, a K-9 unit, trained to detect human remains, alerted to a shallow grave beneath a pile of leaves. Hargrove's team, their hearts heavy, unearthed a body wrapped in a tarp, bound with duct tape. The coroner, Dr. Charles Cokes, confirmed it was Pamela, her death caused by blunt force trauma to the head, likely from a heavy object like a wrench. The autopsy, detailed in court records, revealed defensive wounds on her arms, a sign she'd fought back. The discovery, covered by the New York Times and local outlets, devastated Conway, its residents leaving flowers at Pamela's doorstep. The motive emerged as Hargrove's team dug into Larry's life. Pamela, a frugal woman, had a life insurance policy worth $100,000, with Brandon and Brittany as beneficiaries. Larry, who'd borrowed money from Pamela in the past, had learned of the policy during a conversation at church. His financial troubles, unpaid bills, a repossessed car, painted a picture of desperation. Witnesses, including Linda Harper, testified that Larry had asked Pamela to loan him $10,000, a request she'd refused days before her death. Hargrove theorized that Larry, enraged by the rejection and obsessed with Pamela, had gone to her home to confront her. When she resisted, he struck her, his anger spiraling into murder. The tarp and duct tape, found in his trailer, suggested premeditation, a plan to hide her body and buy time. Larry's arrest sparked a media frenzy. The case, dubbed the Conway cul-de-sac killing by local papers, gripped Arkansas, its details unfolding on CNN and social media platforms like X, where users shared Pamela's photo, calling for justice. The Faulkner County Prosecutor's Office, led by Marcus Vaden, charged Larry with first-degree murder and kidnapping on August 27, 2012. The evidence was compelling. The blood in his truck, his phone records, the tarp matching fibers in his trailer, and a neighbor's security footage showing his truck leaving Pamela's street at 9:30 p.m. A search of his trailer uncovered a bloodied wrench, hidden in a toolbox, its DNA later matched to Pamela. Larry, facing life in prison, maintained his innocence, claiming he'd been framed by an unknown enemy. The trial began on March 4, 2013, in the Faulkner County Circuit Court, presided over by Judge David Reynolds. The courtroom, packed with Pamela's family and church friends, was a crucible of grief and anger. Vaden, a seasoned prosecutor, presented a meticulous case, calling 15 witnesses, including Brandon, who broke down describing his mother's kindness, and Ellen Carter, who recounted the argument she'd overheard. Forensic experts detailed the blood evidence, the wrench, and the grave's concealment, painting Larry as a calculated killer. The prosecution played a recording of Larry's interrogation, his voice faltering as he struggled to explain the blood in his truck. Vaden argued that Larry's motive was twofold: financial gain and unrequited obsession, his charm a mask for violence. The defense, led by public defender Lisa Thompson, fought back. Thompson argued the evidence was circumstantial, suggesting the blood in Larry's truck could have come from a repair job Pamela had asked him to do. She called a character witness, Larry's sister, who described him as a good man, with a temper but no history of violence against women. Thompson questioned the timeline, noting the lack of eyewitnesses to the murder itself. But the jury, after a week-long trial, deliberated for just 4 hours. On March 12, 2013, they found Larry Barnett guilty of first-degree murder and kidnapping. Judge Reynolds, his voice somber, sentenced him to life without parole, citing the brutal and senseless nature of the crime. The aftermath was a tapestry of sorrow and healing. Pamela's children, Brandon and Brittany, struggled to rebuild. Brandon, haunted by finding the house empty, moved to Little Rock, pursuing a career in IT, his mother's encouragement echoing in his mind. Brittany, now a nurse, dedicated her work to Pamela, volunteering at a women's shelter in her memory. Maria, Pamela's mother, attended the trial, her frail hands clutching a locket with Pamela's photo. The Reimer family created a memorial garden at Pamela's church, its roses a tribute to her love of flowers. Conway, shaken by the loss, saw an uptick in community watch programs, neighbors vowing to look out for one another. Larry, now 64, is incarcerated at the Cummins unit, his appeals exhausted by 2015. His family, once vocal in his defense, faded from public view, their shame palpable. The case, covered by the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette and national outlets, sparked discussions about domestic violence and the vulnerability of single women. Pamela's church, led by Pastor John Ellis, held annual vigils, their candles lighting up River Valley Loop. Linda Harper, Pamela's friend, keeps her gardening gloves, a reminder of their shared moments. Conway, a city of resilience, carries Pamela's legacy, a woman whose light, though extinguished, continues to inspire love, faith, and justice. Story 10. The summer of 1916 hung heavy over Sincota, a sleepy village on the outskirts of Budapest, Hungary, where the scent of wildflowers mingled with the dust of dirt roads. The world was at war, its clamor distant but ever present, as young men from the village marched off to the front, leaving behind a quiet unease. Bela Kiss, a 39-year-old tinsmith with a charming smile and a knack for fixing anything metal, was a familiar figure in Sincota. His modest home on Kossuth Street, a tidy cottage with a workshop in the back, was a hub of activity, its yard dotted with large metal drums that neighbors assumed held supplies for his trade. Bela was a bachelor, his life seemingly ordinary, but whispers of his late-night visitors, women who came and went, their laughter echoing briefly before fading, stirred curiosity. On a warm July evening, as the village prepared for another wartime harvest, a local constable's discovery would unravel a chilling mystery, revealing a darkness that would haunt Hungary for decades. Bela Kiss was a man of contradictions, his outward warmth masking a private world few understood. Born in 1877 in a small Hungarian town, he grew up in poverty, his father a blacksmith who taught him the craft. Bela was bright, his hands skilled at shaping tin into pots and lanterns, but he craved more than a tradesman's life. By his 30s, he'd settled in Sincota, a village of 2,000 where life revolved around farming and faith. Bela's charm made him a favorite. He'd fix a neighbor's kettle for free, share stories of Budapest's bustling cafes, and charm women with his attentive gaze. His home, though, was a fortress of solitude, its curtains drawn, its doors locked at night. Neighbors like Mrs. Anna Toth, a widow who sold eggs at the market, noticed Bella's frequent trips to Budapest, returning with packages he never explained. He spoke of marriage, placing ads in newspapers for a bride, but no woman stayed long. In 1914, as Europe plunged into war, Bella's life took a subtle shift. He began receiving letters from women across Hungary, their envelopes scented with perfume, their words hinting at romance. He'd entertain these visitors, often young widows or spinsters, offering tea in his parlor before they vanished, their departures unnoticed in the chaos of wartime. Bella, drafted into the Austro-Hungarian army in 1915, left Sincota abruptly, entrusting his home to his housekeeper, Mrs. Maria Varga, a stern woman who guarded his privacy fiercely. His metal drums, stacked in the yard, grew in number, their contents a mystery. When asked, Bella claimed they held gasoline, a precaution against wartime shortages. The village, distracted by rationing and loss, accepted his word, unaware of the horror they concealed. The unraveling began on July 4, 1916, when Constable Janos Nagy, a grizzled veteran of Sinkota's small police force, received a tip from a neighbor, Istvan Molnar. Istvan, a farmer struggling to fuel his tractor, had heard rumors of Bella's gasoline stash. With the war draining resources, fuel was scarce, and Istvan hoped to buy or borrow some. Nagy, duty-bound to investigate, arrived at Bella's home with a warrant, expecting a routine inspection. Mrs. Varga, her face taut, protested, but Nagy insisted, prying open one of the metal drums in the yard. The stench hit him first, a rancid, unmistakable odor of decay. Inside, submerged in alcohol, was the naked body of a young woman, her throat garrote, her eyes frozen in terror. Nagy, his hands shaking, opened another drum, then another, each revealing a similar horror. 7 bodies, all women, were found that day, their identities unknown but their fates chillingly clear. The discovery, reported by Budapest's Pesti Hurlap, sent shockwaves through Sincota. Nagy called for reinforcements, and Budapest detectives, led by Inspector Ula Kovacs, descended on the village. Kovacs, a meticulous man with a reputation for solving complex cases, catalogued the scene. 24 metal drums, 7 containing bodies, the rest filled with jewelry, clothing, and personal items. The women, aged 25 to 40, had been preserved in alcohol, their bodies meticulously arranged, suggesting a killer with both patience and precision. Autopsies, conducted at Budapest Forensic Institute, confirmed each had been strangled, their deaths dating back to 1912 to 1914. The drums, sealed with airtight lids, were Bella's signature, a tinsmith's twisted craft. Kovacs's team searched Bella's home, uncovering a trove of evidence. Hundreds of letters from women responding to matrimonial ads, a locked room filled with women's clothing, and a ledger detailing transactions with pawnshops in Budapest. Bella had posed as a wealthy widower in newspapers like Zabadnep, luring women with promises of marriage. Victims, identified through missing person reports, included Catalin Varga, a 28-year-old seamstress from Debrecen, and Maria Sabo, a 35-year-old widow from Szeged. Each had visited Bella, their savings withdrawn before their disappearances. The press, including The Guardian's later coverage, dubbed him the Sincota Monster, his crimes a grim reflection of wartime desperation, where lonely women sought love amid chaos. The hunt for Bela Kiss was immediate but fraught. He'd vanished after his 1915 draft, his military records showing he served in a supply unit near the Serbian front. Kovacs traced him to a hospital in Belgrade, where Bela was treated for typhus in early 1916, but he deserted by spring, his whereabouts unknown. The Hungarian army, stretched thin by war, had little resources to pursue him. Kovacs, undeterred, followed leads to Budapest's underworld, where Bela was known to frequent cafes and pawnshops, selling jewelry that matched items found in the drums. A pawnbroker, Imre Farkas, recalled Bela's calm demeanor, his ability to haggle without raising suspicion. Sightings poured in Vienna, Romania, even Turkey, but each lead fizzled, the war's chaos shielding Bella's escape. The investigation revealed a chilling portrait. Bella, likely driven by greed and a need for control, targeted vulnerable women, exploiting their hopes for marriage. His matrimonial ads, placed in papers across Hungary, promised stability, drawing women like moths to a flame. He'd court them, inviting them to Sincota, where they'd disappear, their savings and jewelry added to his hoard. The alcohol preservation, a technique rare for serial killers, suggested a desire to keep trophies, a macabre archive of his conquests. Psychologists, quoted in later reports by the New York Times, speculated Bella suffered from a personality disorder, his charm a mask for psychopathy. The ledger, detailing over $10,000 in profits, equivalent to $200,000 today, showed a financial motive, but the sheer number of victims, 24 drums, though only 7 bodies were found, hinted at a deeper compulsion. Sincota, a village of faith and tradition, reeled. Mrs. Toth, who'd sold Bella eggs, wept at the market, her trust shattered. The village priest, Father Laszlo, held a vigil for the victims, their names read aloud as candles flickered in the church. Families of the identified women, like Catalin's brother, Janos Varga, traveled to Sincota, their grief raw as they claimed her belongings. The press, hungry for details, sensationalized the case, but Kovacs urged restraint, his focus on justice. He worked tirelessly, interviewing hundreds, chasing tips across Europe, but Bella's trail grew cold. By 1918, as the war ended, the case was overshadowed by Hungary's political upheaval, its resources diverted to rebuilding a fractured nation. The years that followed were marked by elusive sightings. In 1920, a French Foreign Legion officer in Algeria reported meeting a soldier named Hoffman, matching Bella's description, but he vanished before authorities could act. In 1932, a New York City detective claimed to have spotted Bella working as a janitor in Manhattan, but the lead was never confirmed. Kovacs, who retired in 1925, never stopped believing Bella was alive, his obsession with the case a personal mission. He died in 1936, his notes, later published in a Hungarian journal, detailing his regret. He was always one step ahead. The Hungarian police, under pressure from families, kept the case open, but without new evidence, it faded from public view. The mystery of Bella Kiss endured, its details preserved in archives and retold in books like The Man in the Drums. Sincota, forever scarred, demolished Bella's home in 1920, its land left fallow as a silent memorial. The unidentified victims, buried in a Budapest cemetery, became symbols of lost hope, their graves marked with simple stones. Hungary, emerging from war and revolution, grappled with the case's legacy, its press revisiting it in anniversaries, as seen in Nepsava articles from the 1930s. Social media in later years revived interest, with ex-posts speculating about Bella's fate, some claiming he lived into the 1940s, others believing he perished in the war. None were verified, the truth buried with Bella. By 2025, the case remains unsolved, Bella's fate a question mark. The 24 drums, some empty, hint at more victims, their stories lost to time. Sincota, now a suburb of Budapest, carries the weight of its past, its residents wary of strangers. The families of Catalin, Maria, and others hold annual memorials, their pain a quiet testament to love and loss. Bella Kiss, the tinsmith who vanished, left behind a legacy of fear, his name a whisper in Hungary's history. A reminder that even in a village of warmth, darkness can take root, its roots deep and unseen. Story 11. The sun dipped low over Green Lake, Wisconsin, on August 11, 2024, casting a golden shimmer across the water, the deepest lake in the state, its depths holding secrets known only to the fish and the currents. Ryan Borgwart, a 45-year-old woodworker and father of 3, paddled his kayak through the gentle ripples, his silhouette a familiar sight to the occasional fisherman casting lines from the shore. To the world, Ryan was a devoted husband, a church-going man, and a craftsman whose hands turned raw timber into art. His life in Watertown, a small town an hour north of Milwaukee, revolved around his wife, Emily, their 3 teenage children, and the woodworking shop where he spent long hours. But beneath this ordinary life, a plan was unfolding, one that would unravel a family, confound a community, and spark a mystery that gripped the nation. As night fell, Ryan's kayak capsized, his phone sank into the lake's depths, and he vanished, leaving behind a trail of clues that would lead not to a tragedy, but to a calculated deception. Ryan Borgwart was a man who seemed to have it all. Born in 1979 in Watertown, he grew up in a close-knit family, his childhood filled with fishing trips on Green Lake and Sunday services at the local Lutheran church. Tall, with a quiet demeanor and a quick smile, Ryan was a tinkerer, his hands always busy with tools. He met Emily in high school, their romance blossoming over shared dreams of a simple life. They married in 2002, settling in Watertown, where they raised their children, 2 boys and a girl, all teenagers by 2024. Ryan's woodworking business, a small operation run from a shed behind their home, was his pride, its shelves lined with handcrafted tables and chairs sold at local markets. He was a regular at church, coaching youth soccer, and volunteering at community events, his life a portrait of stability. But beneath this facade, Ryan was restless, his mind drawn to a world beyond Watertown's quiet streets. In early 2024, signs of strain emerged. Emily, a schoolteacher, noticed Ryan's late nights at the shop, his phone buzzing with messages he'd dismiss as work-related. He'd taken out a $375,000 life insurance policy in January, claiming it was for the family's security, a detail later reported by CNN. He spent hours online, his laptop glowing in the dark, researching foreign bank accounts and how to disappear, as uncovered by the Green Lake County Sheriff's Office. Ryan had been communicating with a woman from Uzbekistan, their messages a mix of flirtation and promises, a secret he guarded closely. He'd reported his passport lost in the spring, quietly obtaining a replacement, a move that would later prove pivotal. To Emily, he was the same Ryan, attentive if distracted, but to those who knew him less well, like his neighbor Tom Kessler, he seemed preoccupied, his eyes often fixed on some distant point. The night of August 11th began like any other Sunday. Ryan attended church with Emily and the kids, his face serene as he sang hymns, his hands folded in prayer. After lunch, he announced he was going fishing on Green Lake, a 50-mile drive from Watertown. Emily thought nothing of it. Ryan often kayaked there, its depths a challenge he loved. He loaded his kayak onto his trailer, kissed Emily goodbye, and drove off, his tackle box and fishing rod in tow. At 10:49 p.m., he sent Emily a text, heading to shore. It was the last she'd hear from him. By dawn, when Ryan didn't return, Emily's worry turned to panic. She called the Green Lake County Sheriff's Office at 5:34 a.m. on August 12th, her voice trembling as she reported him missing. Deputies found Ryan's car and trailer at Dodge Memorial Park, his kayak adrift on the lake, capsized, with his life jacket, tackle box, wallet, keys, and license inside. The scene screamed accident, and a massive search began. Sheriff Mark Podall, a seasoned officer with a deep connection to Green Lake, led the effort. The lake, 237 feet at its deepest, was a formidable challenge. Divers, underwater drones, and 9 cadaver teams scoured the water for 54 days, their efforts costing $35,000 to $40,000, as Podall later told Wisconsin Public Radio. Volunteers, including Keith Cormican of Bruce's Legacy, a nonprofit search group, joined the search, their boats cutting through the lake's surface day after day. Emily and the children, clinging to hope, stood on the shore, their eyes scanning the horizon. The community rallied, leaving flowers at the park and sharing Ryan's photo, a man with short brown hair and a kind face, on social media, as reported by the Fond du Lac Reporter. But as weeks passed with no body, doubts crept in. Cormican, who'd recovered dozens of drowning victims, began to question his skills, telling CNN, "I lost a lot of sleep over it." On October 7th, a breakthrough shifted the case. Canadian law enforcement reported that Ryan's name had been checked at the border on August 13th, a day after his disappearance, using a second passport. Sheriff Potall, alerted by the FBI, ordered a forensic analysis of Ryan's laptop, which Emily had provided. The findings, detailed in court documents, were staggering. A replaced hard drive, cleared browser history, photos of passports, inquiries about foreign banks, and communication with an Uzbek woman. Ryan had synced his laptop with iCloud on August 11th, changed email addresses linked to financial accounts, and purchased an airline gift card. The evidence, reported by NBC News, pointed to a planned escape. Potall, his voice steady but grim, announced on November 8th that Ryan was likely alive, possibly in Europe, having staged his death. The news, covered by ABC News, stunned Watertown, turning grief into betrayal. The truth unfolded through Ryan's own words. On November 11th, he contacted the sheriff's office via a Russian-speaking woman, sending a video from an apartment saying, "I'm safe, secure, no problem," as shown at a November 21st press conference. Potall, pulling at Ryan's heartstrings, urged him to return for his family, emphasizing the emotional toll on Emily and the children. Ryan's plan, detailed in a criminal complaint filed on December 11th, was meticulous. He'd stashed an electric bike near the boat launch, paddled out with a child-sized inflatable raft, overturned his kayak, and dumped his phone and tackle box into the lake to sell the death. He rode 80 miles to Madison overnight, boarded a bus to Detroit, and crossed into Canada, where border agents, suspicious of his lack of a driver's license, questioned him but let him pass. From Toronto, he flew to Paris, then to Georgia, not the U.S. state, but the country in Western Asia, carrying $5,500 in cash, as reported by People. In Georgia, Ryan met the woman he'd been communicating with, staying in a hotel for days. He used a VPN to mask his location, making it appear he was in Russia when checking news about his case, aware that Georgia could extradite him. But his plan unraveled on November 8th, when Chief Deputy Matthew Vandy Koch's email reached him, stating authorities knew he was alive. Ryan later told investigators, as quoted in the complaint, that his heart hit the floor when he saw the woman's photo, realizing he made a mistake, the one mistake he couldn't make. The details of this mistake, possibly a catfishing scheme or a misjudgment of the woman's intentions, remained unclear, but it shook him. Potall's pleas, coupled with Ryan's guilt over his family's pain, prompted his return. On December 10th, he flew back to the U.S., turning himself in at the Green Lake County Justice Center, as announced by Potall on December 11th. The courtroom was hushed on December 11th, 2024, as Ryan, in an orange jumpsuit, faced Judge Mark Slate. Charged with obstructing an officer, a Class A misdemeanor carrying up to 9 months in jail, and a $10,000 fine, Ryan stood alone, his parents in the gallery but no family members speaking to him. He told Slate he had only $20, unable to afford a lawyer, and chose to represent himself, a decision reported by Court TV. Slate, noting Ryan's voluntary return, set a $500 signature bond, denying the prosecutor's request to seize his passport, as Ryan was deemed not a flight risk. A not guilty plea was entered, with the next hearing set for January 13, 2025, and later ones for April 28 and July 14, per WLUK-TV. Emily, devastated, filed for legal separation on December 12th, seeking sole custody of their children. Her petition stating their 22-year marriage was irretrievably broken, as reported by ABC News. The aftermath was a storm of emotions. Emily, grappling with betrayal, faced the community's whispers, her children torn between anger and confusion. The search's cost, both financial and emotional, weighed heavily. Cormacan, relieved but hurt, chose not to seek restitution, his focus on healing. Potall, proud of his team's persistence, sought county reimbursement, his voice cracking as he spoke of bringing a dad back for his family, as quoted by NBC News. Watertown, a town of 20,000, buzzed with debate, some on X calling Ryan selfish, others pitying his desperation. The case, covered by major outlets like CNN and the New York Times, sparked discussions about the pressures of modern life, and the lengths one might go to escape. Ryan, now 45, awaits his legal fate, his woodworking shop shuttered, his family fractured. Green Lake, once his sanctuary, is now a symbol of his deception, its waters still holding the secrets of that August night. Emily, raising their children alone, finds strength in routine, her faith tested but unbroken. The community, shaken but resilient, moves forward, their trust in appearances forever altered by a man who paddled into the night, chasing a new life that slipped through his fingers like water. Story 12. In the quiet, tree-lined streets of Knoxville, Tennessee, where the air carried the faint scent of autumn leaves and the distant hum of high school football games, life seemed to unfold with the predictable rhythm of small-town America. The Sterkey Hills subdivision, with its neatly manicured lawns and cozy family homes, was a place where neighbors waved to one another and children rode bikes until the streetlights flickered on. It was here, in this unassuming corner of Knox County, that 16-year-old Emma Jane Walker lived, a bright, vivacious cheerleader whose smile could light up a room and whose dreams stretched far beyond the rolling hills of her hometown. But beneath the surface of this idyllic community, a darkness was brewing, one that would shatter the lives of those who knew Emma and leave a scar on Knoxville that would not soon fade. Emma was the kind of girl who seemed to have it all. A junior at Central High School, she was an honor student with a sharp mind and a heart full of kindness. Her long brown hair bounced as she led cheers on the sidelines of Bobcat football games, her green eyes sparkling with the infectious energy of youth. She was the daughter of Mark and Jill Walker, a couple who doted on their only daughter, and the younger sister of Evan, who was fiercely protective of her. Emma's world was one of promise. College applications loomed on the horizon, and her friends spoke of her ambition to become a nurse, a career that would let her care for others the way she always had. Her room was a reflection of her vibrant personality. Posters of her favorite bands adorned the walls, a neatly organized desk held her school books, and her cheerleading uniform hung proudly in the closet. She was the girl who could make anyone laugh, who stayed up late texting friends about crushes and dreams, who seemed destined to leave a mark on the world. But in the fall of 2016, Emma's life was not as carefree as it appeared. Her heart was entangled in a relationship that had grown increasingly turbulent, a relationship that weighed heavily on her young shoulders. William Riley Gall, known to most as Riley, was 2 years her senior. At 18, he was a freshman at Maryville College, a small liberal arts school just a short drive from Knoxville. With his athletic build, boyish charm, and a reputation as a standout wide receiver on the Central High School football team, Riley had once been the kind of boy who seemed destined for greatness. His teammates admired his speed on the field, and his easy smile made him a favorite among peers. But there was another side to Riley, one that emerged as his relationship with Emma deepened, a side marked by jealousy, control, and an inability to let go. Emma and Riley had begun dating in 2014, when she was a freshman and he a junior. Their relationship was the stuff of high school lore, cheerleader and football player, a picture-perfect couple who turned heads at homecoming dances and shared late-night texts filled with promises and dreams. They were young in love and seemingly inseparable. But as the years passed, the cracks in their romance began to show. Riley's affection, once warm and attentive, turned possessive. He didn't like Emma talking to other boys, even as friends. He'd text her incessantly, demanding to know where she was, who she was with. Emma's parents, Mark and Jill, noticed the change in their daughter. Her laughter grew quieter, her phone a constant source of tension. Friends saw it too, the way Emma's shoulders tensed when Riley's name came up, the way she'd check her phone nervously, as if bracing for another barrage of messages. By the fall of 2016, Emma had had enough. She was 16 now, growing into her own strength, her own sense of self. She wanted to focus on school, on cheerleading, on the future that awaited her. She told Riley it was over, that she needed space. But Riley couldn't accept it. He clung to the hope of winning her back, his desperation spiraling into something darker. He began using an app called Phoner to send anonymous texts, hoping to manipulate Emma's emotions by pretending to be someone else. He'd text her cryptic messages, sometimes threatening, sometimes pleading. Emma, strong-willed and perceptive, saw through the ruse. She blocked his number, but Riley's persistence only grew. He concocted elaborate schemes to regain her attention, staging a fake kidnapping where he posed as the victim, hoping Emma would run to his rescue. The ploy backfired. Emma was shaken, but she didn't return to him. Instead, she grew more resolute, telling friends she was done with Riley for good. The neighborhood of Sterky Hills began to feel less safe. Neighbors reported seeing a figure dressed in black lurking near the Walker home, a shadowy presence that sent chills down their spines. Emma confided in friends about her fear, telling them she felt watched, hunted. She'd seen the man in black, too, a figure with a distinctive gait that she suspected was Riley. Surveillance footage from a neighbor's camera confirmed her fears, capturing a person in dark clothing walking toward a community pool, where Riley was known to park his car when sneaking over to see Emma. Her parents, alarmed by her distress, began setting the home's alarm system each night, a precaution they had never felt necessary before. Mark and Jill tried to shield their daughter, forbidding Riley from contacting her, but his obsession seemed to know no bounds. On the night of November 20th, 2016, Emma went to bed as she always did, her room a sanctuary of teenage dreams. She'd spent the evening with friends, laughing about school crushes and making plans for the weekend. Her phone, usually buzzing with notifications, was quiet. She'd blocked Riley's number again, hoping for peace. She climbed into bed, pulling the covers over her, unaware that it would be her last night. Outside, the Sterky Hills subdivision was still, the only sound the rustle of leaves in the cool autumn breeze. The stars hung low in the Tennessee sky, casting a faint glow over the sleeping neighborhood. Around 3 a.m., the silence was shattered by 2 gunshots, sharp and unmistakable, echoing through the quiet streets. The shots came from the backyard of the Walker family home, fired through the wall of Emma's bedroom. One bullet lodged in her pillow, inches from where she lay. The other struck her just behind her left ear, a precise and deadly hit that ended her life instantly. Emma, who had been dreaming of college and a career in nursing, who had cheered at countless games and brought joy to everyone she met, was gone before she could even wake. The morning of November 21st began like any other for Jill Walker. She rose early, the house quiet except for the soft creak of floorboards under her feet. She brewed coffee, the familiar routine grounding her in the calm of a new day. She called out to Emma, expecting her daughter to emerge from her room, bleary-eyed but smiling, ready for another day of school. When no response came, Jill's maternal instincts kicked in. She walked down the hall, her footsteps quickening as a nagging unease settled in her chest. She pushed open Emma's door and froze. Her daughter lay motionless in bed, her lips blue, her body cold. At first, Jill thought Emma had been sick, perhaps vomited in her sleep. She reached out to touch her daughter's foot, hoping to rouse her, but the coldness of Emma's skin sent a wave of dread through her. She shook her gently, calling her name, but there was no response. Then she saw the blood, the tissue staining the pillow, and her world collapsed. Jill's screams woke the household, piercing the morning stillness as she realized the unthinkable. Her daughter was dead. Mark rushed to the room, his heart pounding as he took in the scene. Evan, Emma's brother, stood frozen in the doorway, his face pale with shock. The Walkers called 911, their voices trembling as they tried to explain what they couldn't yet comprehend. Police arrived quickly, their radios crackling as they cordoned off the Walker home. The once warm space was now a crime scene, its walls marked by the violence that had intruded. Officers found a bullet hole in the exterior wall of Emma's bedroom, a stark reminder of the act that had taken her life. Inside, a second bullet was embedded in her pillow, inches from where her head had rested. The medical examiner arrived, her face grim as she examined Emma's body. The cause of death was clear, a single gunshot wound to the head, delivered with chilling precision. As news of Emma's death spread, the Sterky Hills community reeled. Neighbors gathered on their lawns, whispering in hushed tones, their faces etched with disbelief. At Central High School, students and teachers were stunned, the hallways eerily quiet as grief settled over the campus. Emma's cheerleading squad gathered in the gymnasium, clutching one another as they sobbed, unable to fathom a world without her. Her friends recounted her final days, the fear she'd expressed about Riley, the way she'd tried to move on. The Walkers, devastated and disoriented, clung to each other, their home now a place of unbearable loss. Investigators wasted no time. The bullet hole in Emma's bedroom wall pointed to a deliberate act, and suspicion fell almost immediately on Riley Gall. The Walkers had long been wary of him, their concerns rooted in his increasingly erratic behavior. Emma's friends told police about the anonymous texts, the staged kidnapping, the man in black, who had haunted their neighborhood. Detectives learned that Riley had been at Emma's house before, knew the layout of her room, and could pinpoint exactly where she slept. His cell phone data placed him near the Walker home at the time of the shooting, contradicting his claim that he had been in Maryville doing homework. Most damning of all was the murder weapon, a 9mm Glock pistol stolen from Riley's grandfather, a gun he had asked a friend how to clean of fingerprints, a gun he had planned to dispose of in the Tennessee River. Riley's friends, Alex McCarty and Noah Walton, became key figures in the investigation. Torn between loyalty to their friend and the horror of what he'd done, they agreed to help the Knox County Sheriff's Office. Equipped with wires and body cameras, they met with Riley, engaging him in casual conversation that belied the gravity of their mission. In those recorded exchanges, Riley spoke about Emma's death with a chilling detachment, discussing how he'd tried to get rid of evidence, how he'd planned to toss the gun into the river. He didn't know his words were being captured, each one tightening the noose around him. On November 23, 2016, as Riley prepared to dispose of a trash bag containing the gun, black clothing, gloves, and duct tape, deputies moved in. The man in black was arrested, charged with first-degree murder, stalking, theft, tampering with evidence, reckless endangerment, and possessing a firearm during a dangerous felony. The arrest sent shockwaves through Knoxville. Riley, the former football star, the boy who had once been Emma's Prince Charming, was now a murder suspect. The community grappled with the duality of his character, the athlete who had charmed his way into their hearts, and the killer who had taken one of their own. For Emma's family, the arrest brought a flicker of relief, but it couldn't ease the pain of their loss. They wanted answers, justice, a way to make sense of the senseless. The trial of William Riley Gall began in May 2018, nearly 18 months after Emma's death. The Knox County Criminal Court was packed, the air thick with tension as reporters, community members, and Emma's loved ones filled the benches. The Walkers sat in the front row, their faces etched with grief and resolve. Jill clutched Mark's hand, her eyes red from sleepless nights. Evan, now a young man, sat beside them, his jaw tight as he stared at the boy who had taken his sister. Riley, dressed in a suit that seemed too big for his lanky frame, sat quietly at the defense table, his boyish features at odds with the gravity of the charges against him. To some, he looked like the high school athlete he had once been. To others, he was a monster who had destroyed a family. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney General Kevin Allen, opened with a powerful narrative. He described Riley as a young man consumed by obsession, unable to let go of Emma even after she ended their relationship. Allen recounted the events leading up to the murder. The anonymous texts sent through the phoner app, the staged kidnapping, the surveillance footage capturing a figure in black near Emma's home. He painted a vivid picture of the night of November 20th, when Riley, dressed in dark clothing, stood in the backyard of the Walker home and fired 2 shots through Emma's bedroom wall, knowing exactly where she lay. This was no accident, Allen told the jury, his voice steady but forceful. This was about criminal intent to kill. He pointed to the evidence, the stolen 9mm Glock, the cell phone data placing Riley at the scene, the recordings of him discussing how to dispose of evidence. The prosecution's case was methodical, overwhelming, a tapestry of facts that left little room for doubt. The defense, led by attorney Wesley Stone, took a different approach. They didn't dispute that Riley fired the shots. There was no denying the forensic evidence or his own admissions to friends. Instead, Stone argued that Riley's actions were reckless, not murderous. He described Riley as a lovesick teenager, desperate to win Emma back through misguided, even crazy stunts. Stone claimed Riley had only meant to scare her, to create a scenario where he could swoop in as her hero. The idea that Riley didn't know the bullets would penetrate the wall, that he didn't intend to kill, was central to the defense's case. "This is a tragedy," Stone told the jury, his voice heavy with the weight of the admission. "But intentionally doing an act and intending to kill are two different things." He urged the jury to consider lesser charges like reckless homicide rather than first-degree murder, emphasizing that Riley's plan, however bizarre, was not meant to end in death. The trial unfolded over several days, each moment heavy with emotion. Witnesses took the stand, their voices trembling as they recounted Emma's final days. Her friends spoke of her fear, her determination to move on from Riley. Neighbors described the man in black they'd seen lurking in the subdivision, their testimony corroborated by grainy surveillance footage. Riley's friends, Alex and Noah, testified about the recordings, their faces pale as they described betraying their friend to do what was right. The prosecution played the audio, Riley's voice filling the courtroom as he casually discussed disposing of the murder weapon. Emma's parents listened in silence, their grief a palpable presence in the room. The forensic evidence was damning. Ballistics confirmed the bullets came from the stolen Glock, and the trajectory showed they were fired from close range, aimed directly at where Emma slept. Riley chose not to testify, a decision that left the jury to interpret his silence. His attorney argued it was a sign of remorse, a young man too overwhelmed to speak. The prosecution saw it differently, suggesting Riley had no defense for his actions. During closing arguments, Kevin Allen's voice rose with conviction. "He was possessive, manipulative, controlling," he said, pointing at Riley. "He was toxic to her. This was no accident. This is about criminal intent to kill." Wesley Stone countered with a plea for mercy, acknowledging Riley's mistakes but insisting they didn't amount to murder. "Riley did not mean to hurt her or cause her death," he said. "He was trying to get her attention. I'm not saying it's logical." The jury deliberated for 4 hours, a tense eternity for those waiting outside. Reporters scribbled notes, community members whispered prayers, and the walkers sat in stoic silence, their hands clasped tightly. On May 8, 2018, the jury returned with their verdict. Guilty on all counts, including first-degree murder, stalking, felony murder, tampering with evidence, reckless endangerment, possessing a firearm during a dangerous felony, and theft. The courtroom erupted in quiet sobs from Emma's family, their relief tempered by the permanence of their loss. Judge Bob McGee imposed a mandatory life sentence for the murder charge, with the possibility of parole after 51 years. Riley, just 19 at the time, would be in his 70s before he could even dream of freedom. His bond was revoked, and he was taken into custody, his head bowed as deputies led him away. At a separate sentencing hearing for the lesser charges, prosecutors pushed for additional time, arguing that Riley's actions showed a pattern of dangerous behavior. "Keep him where he belongs," Assistant District Attorney General Molly Martin said. "He doesn't deserve any opportunity to ever get out of prison." But Judge McGee, noting that Riley had no prior criminal record, ruled that the sentences for the additional convictions, amounting to a little over a decade, would run concurrently with the life sentence, making them largely symbolic. Riley spoke at the hearing, his voice trembling as he addressed the courtroom. "I'm sorry I took Emma away from you," he said, his eyes flickering toward the walkers. "I loved Emma. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about her or what I did." Prosecutors called the apology insincere, pointing to jailhouse recordings where Riley had rehearsed his words, calculating how they might sway the judge. For Emma's family, the words were hollow. Nothing could bring back their daughter, their sister, their light. The legal battles didn't end with the conviction. In 2021, Riley filed a motion for a new trial, arguing that the evidence against him was insufficient. The motion was denied, with Judge McGee stating there was not enough disputable evidence to warrant a new trial. Riley appealed to the Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals, but in February 2023, the court upheld his murder conviction, modifying only a minor theft charge that had no impact on his sentence. In April 2025, Riley's attorney made a final plea to the Tennessee Supreme Court, but the request was denied. Only capital cases receive automatic review, and Riley's fate was sealed. In June 2025, Riley filed a post-conviction relief petition, claiming ineffective counsel and citing a failed legislative amendment that might have reduced parole eligibility for murder convictions. The petition, filed without an attorney, was set for a hearing on July 25, 2025, but few held out hope that it would change the outcome. The evidence against Riley was overwhelming, the pain he caused immeasurable. For the Walker family, the years since Emma's death have been a journey through grief and advocacy. Jill and Mark threw themselves into raising awareness about teen dating violence, determined to ensure that Emma's story would save others. They spoke at schools, shared their daughter's story with the media, and supported organizations dedicated to preventing similar tragedies. They told of the warning signs they'd missed, the controlling texts, the obsessive behavior, the way Riley's love had twisted into something dangerous. Emma's friends, too, carried her memory forward, organizing vigils and fundraisers in her honor. The Central High School gymnasium, where Emma had once cheered, became a place of pilgrimage for those who loved her, a space where her absence was felt as keenly as her presence once was. Knoxville, too, was changed by Emma's murder. The case sparked conversations about the dangers of toxic relationships, the warning signs of obsession, and the need for education about healthy boundaries. Parents began talking to their children about the red flags of controlling behavior, about the importance of speaking up when something felt wrong. Schools implemented programs to teach students about respect, consent, and the signs of abuse. Emma's story became a cautionary tale, not just in Tennessee but across the country, covered by outlets like People magazine and the Law and Crime Network. Her death was a reminder that violence could strike even in the safest of places, that a single act could ripple outward, touching countless lives. The Sterky Hills subdivision, once a symbol of small-town tranquility, now carries the weight of Emma's loss. Neighbors still wave to one another, but there's a quiet vigilance now, a heightened awareness of the fragility of safety. The Walker home stands as it did in 2016, its exterior unchanged but its heart forever altered. Emma's room remains untouched, a shrine to a life cut short. Her cheerleading uniform still hangs in the closet, her school books gathering dust on the desk. Jill sometimes sits on Emma's bed, tracing the patterns on the comforter, remembering the sound of her daughter's laughter. Mark and Evan carry their grief in silence, their love for Emma a bond that holds them together. Riley Gall, now confined to a cell at the Northwest Correctional Complex in Tiptonville, will spend decades behind bars. His youth, once filled with promise, has faded into the gray monotony of prison life. The boy who once dreamed of football glory is now a convicted murderer, his name synonymous with a tragedy that shook a community. For Emma's family, justice has been served, but closure remains elusive. The pain of losing Emma is a wound that time cannot fully heal, a reminder of a girl whose light was extinguished too soon. As the sun sets over Sterky Hills, the neighborhood looks much the same as it did in 2016. Children play in the streets, their laughter echoing through the dusk. The lights of Central High School's football field glow on Friday nights, the roar of the crowd a familiar soundtrack. But for those who knew Emma Walker, the world is a little dimmer. Her smile, her spirit, her dreams, they live on in the memories of those who loved her, a legacy of love and loss that will never fade. Emma's story is a testament to the fragility of life, the power of love, and the enduring strength of a community determined to honor her memory by fighting for a world where no other family has to endure such pain. Story 13. The city of Krakow in November 1998 was a place of cobblestone streets and ancient spires, its charm steeped in centuries of history. The Vistula River wound through its heart, reflecting the gray skies of late autumn. Katarzyna Zawada, a 23-year-old student at Jagiellonian University, walked these streets with a quiet determination, her blonde hair tucked under a scarf, her eyes often lost in thought. Known to her friends as Kasia, she was a young woman grappling with the weight of grief. The death of her father in 1996, during a hiking trip she had suggested, had left her cloaked in depression, her once vibrant spirit dimmed. Yet she pressed on, studying religious philosophy, seeking meaning in the questions that haunted her. On November 12th, she was due to meet her mother, Barbara, at a psychiatric clinic in Nauahuda for an appointment to address her mental health. Barbara waited, her breath fogging in the chilly air, but Kasia never arrived. By evening, when her daughter's phone went unanswered and her small apartment stood empty, Barbara's worry turned to dread. She reported Kasia missing, but the police, citing protocol, told her to wait. That wait would stretch into a nightmare that gripped Poland for decades. Kasia's life had been one of quiet resilience. Born on June 1, 1975, she grew up in a modest home near Krakow, an only child whose love for literature and philosophy shaped her introspective nature. Her father's death had shattered her, leaving her to navigate a world that felt emptier, colder. At Jagiellonian, one of Europe's oldest universities, she had tried psychology and history before settling on religious studies, drawn to its exploration of life's deeper questions. Friends described her as kind but withdrawn, a woman who sat alone during lectures, her thoughts a private sanctuary. Her mother, Barbara, was her anchor, arranging therapy to help Kasia cope with the guilt and sorrow that clung to her like a shadow. That November day, as Kasia set out for her appointment, she carried the weight of her struggles, but also a flicker of hope for healing. She never reached the clinic. 2 months later, on January 6, 1999, the Vistula River offered up a grim secret. The crew of the Elk Pusher, a tugboat chugging through the icy waters near Krakow, noticed their propeller snag on something pale and heavy. Miroslav M., the operator, peered into the hatch, expecting debris or a fishing net. Instead, he found a foul-smelling mass, slick and sack-like, with a human ear attached. Horror seized him as he and his crew untangled the object, realizing it was human skin, meticulously flayed from a body. Police swarmed the scene, their faces grim as forensic experts confirmed the unthinkable. The skin belonged to Katarzyna Zawada, identified through DNA. A week later, on January 14th, her right leg and fragments of her clothing, a sweater, jeans, a flannel shirt with a square cut out, were found near a hydroelectric dam, tangled among branches in the river's current. The rest of her body, her head, arms, left leg, and torso, remained missing, swallowed by the Vistula or hidden by her killer. The discovery sent shockwaves through Poland, a nation unaccustomed to such grotesque violence. Krakow, a city of culture and learning, recoiled as news reports described a crime that seemed ripped from a horror film. The skin, expertly removed from ear to groin with an oblique seam from the right breast to the left shoulder, bore signs of surgical precision. Forensic analysis revealed a chilling detail. Kasia had been flayed alive, her suffering unimaginable as her killer peeled away her skin with deliberate care. The nipples were absent, the cuts clean, suggesting the perpetrator intended to fashion the skin into a suit, a macabre trophy reminiscent of fictional killers like Buffalo Bill or the real-life Ed Gein. The police, led by the Krakow force, launched a massive investigation, their urgency fueled by fear that this was the work of a serial predator. Profilers warned of a high likelihood of more murders, a prediction that seemed to materialize months later. In May 1999, Krakow police received a call from an elderly man in a nearby village. His voice trembled as he reported a murder in his home, suspecting his grandson, Vladimir W., a Russian immigrant, as the killer. Officers arrived to find a scene of staggering brutality. In the basement, the body of Witold W., Vladimir's 50-year-old father, hung upside down, headless. His scalp and facial skin lay nearby, sewn into a mask. Vladimir admitted to wearing his father's face and clothes for a day, deceiving his near-blind grandfather. The parallels to Kasia's case were uncanny. both victims flayed, their skin manipulated with grotesque intent. Investigators briefly suspected Vladimir in Kasia's murder, noting his ties to Jagiellonian psychology program, where Kasia had once studied. But DNA from Kasia's remains didn't match, and Vladimir's crime, while horrific, appeared driven by familial psychosis rather than the calculated precision of Kasia's killer. He was convicted of his father's murder and sentenced to 25 years, leaving Kasia's case unsolved. The investigation, dubbed one of Poland's most complex, drew international expertise. The FBI lent profilers and forensic teams from Germany, and the UK analyzed the remains. Early theories pointed to a killer with medical or anatomical knowledge, possibly a surgeon or butcher, given the skill required to flay a body so precisely. Others speculated about a ritualistic motive, though no evidence supported this. The Vistula was searched for months, divers scouring its murky depths, but no further remains surfaced. Police interviewed Kasia's classmates, professors, and neighbors, piecing together her final days. She had been seen leaving her apartment on November 12th, her route to Nowa Huta unremarkable. A witness reported a young woman matching her description near the clinic, but the trail ended there. The case grew cold, its horrors fading into Krakow's collective memory, though Barbara never stopped searching for answers, her grief a constant ache. Years passed, and Kasia's story became a grim legend, whispered in true crime circles and debated on early internet forums. The lack of closure tormented Barbara, who kept Kasia's room untouched, her books and clothes a shrine to a daughter stolen too soon. In 2012, Poland's Archive X, a cold case unit formed to tackle unsolved crimes, reopened the investigation. Advances in forensic technology allowed a fresh look at the evidence. Traces of a rare plant found on Kasia's skin pointed to a specific area of Krakow, narrowing the search. DNA samples, preserved despite the skin's weeks in the river, were retested with modern techniques. The breakthrough came in 2017, 19 years after Kasia's disappearance, when police arrested Robert Janczewski, a 52-year-old former soldier and lab technician. A friend's letter to authorities, its contents guarded by investigators, had reignited suspicion. Janczewski, a person of interest in 1998, had slipped through the cracks due to insufficient evidence. Now, new findings changed everything. Janczewski was an enigma, a man whose unassuming exterior hid a disturbing past. Born in Krakow, he had served in the military, trained in martial arts, and worked briefly at the Krakow Institute of Zoology, where he dissected human corpses for research. He was fired after all the institute's rabbits were killed during his shift, a red flag dismissed at the time. Neighbors described him as reclusive, with a history of harassing women. He frequented Kasia's grave, a detail that chilled investigators. A search of his apartment uncovered traces of blood in the bath and its frame, though tests couldn't conclusively link it to Kasia. His psychological profile was damning: an obsession with body mutilation, a fascination with skinning animals, and a surgical precision honed through lab work. Police believed he had abducted Kasia, held her captive in his home for weeks, and subjected her to prolonged torture before flaying her alive. Her skin, they theorized, was preserved as a suit, her other remains disposed of to evade detection. Janczewski's arrest in October 2017 was a flicker of hope for Barbara, now frail but unyielding in her quest for justice. Charged with aggravated murder with particular cruelty, he denied knowing Kasia, his voice calm but unconvincing. The Court of Appeal extended his detention until September 2018 as investigators built their case. In December, Janczewski claimed harassment by prison guards, allegations investigated and deemed baseless. By September 2019, prosecutors requested a closed trial, citing the case's sensitivity and the need to protect forensic details. The trial, shrouded in secrecy, unfolded behind closed doors, leaving the public hungry for answers. Janczewski was convicted, though the exact sentence remains unclear, a reflection of Poland's strict privacy laws. For Barbara, the verdict was a hollow victory, justice delayed too long to soothe her pain. Kasia's memory, she said, was all she had left. The case's horrors didn't end with Janciuski's conviction. On October 31st, 2024, he was released, as Polish law prohibited further detention without a finalized trial outcome. The news, reported sparingly, reignited public outrage. Forums buzzed with speculation. Was Janciuski truly guilty, or a scapegoat for a case too gruesome to leave unsolved? Some theorized accomplices, others a broader network, but no evidence supported these claims. The investigation's opacity fueled distrust, with true crime enthusiasts dissecting every detail. A 2020 Reddit post, garnering hundreds of votes, questioned the DNA's viability after weeks in the river, while a 2022 podcast speculated about Janciuski's motives, drawing parallels to fictional killers. The case inspired documentaries and books, each grappling with its unanswered questions. Why Kasia? How did her killer evade capture for so long? What became of her missing remains? Kasia's murder reshaped Poland's approach to crime. The case spurred advances in forensic techniques, from DNA analysis to crime scene reconstruction, ensuring future killers face swifter justice. Psychological profiling, once nascent, became a cornerstone of investigations, ArchiveX's success a testament to dogged persistence. Yet for Krakow, the scars lingered. The Vistula, once a symbol of the city's beauty, became a reminder of its darkest chapter. Students at Jagiellonian spoke of Kasia in hushed tones, her story a cautionary tale. Barbara, in rare interviews, described her daughter as a light extinguished too soon, her love for books and quiet moments a legacy no killer could erase. She kept Kasia's favorite scarf, its scent long faded, a tether to a life cut short. The human toll of Kasia's murder extended beyond her family. Miroslav M., the tugboat operator, never returned to the Vistula, haunted by the ear he'd seen in the propeller's tangle. Investigators, hardened by years of grim work, admitted the case tested their resolve. One detective, speaking anonymously, described sleepless nights, the image of Kasia's skin seared into his mind. The FBI profiler, reflecting years later, called it one of the most disturbing cases he'd encountered, its brutality unmatched. For Poland, Kasia became a symbol of vulnerability and resilience, her story a call to protect the fragile threads of life. Vigils in Krakow, though small, lit candles by the river, their flames a quiet defiance against the darkness. Janciuski, if guilty, took Kasia's final moments with him, his silence a last act of cruelty. Whether he acted alone or with others, the truth lies buried, perhaps forever. Kasia's apartment, now occupied by strangers, stands as it did in 1998, its windows catching the same autumn light. Barbara, in her final years, visits her daughter's grave, laying flowers where Janciuski once stood. The Vistula flows on, its secrets kept, but Kasia's name endures, whispered in classrooms, written in case files, carried in a mother's heart. Her murder, one of Poland's most chilling, is more than a crime. It's a wound, a question, a reminder that even in the quietest cities, darkness can lurk, waiting for its moment.